Radiance fall, PK rise, and what's the word Myth used to describe their play? Clinical. That's what we saw from them in game number 2, a 2-0 over Radiance. And now some troubles, I think, here, Gore, if you are a Radiance fan, if you are Team Radiance, as they're now on that 3-game losing streak that Dolson highlighted, and PK kind of surging here lately as well, playing cleanly, playing low-risk Smite, knowing the right moves to make at the right times, and daring their opposition to have an answer.
Yeah, it's kind of two ways to look at it. Like Radiance, you're looking at the fact that they have another set to play today, and maybe you're a little stressed out that things aren't going so well for their first game. Knights, on the other hand, you're looking at the fact that they win this, and they're looking like a team that is trying to climb their way up the standings right now. I mean, they have been very consistently 5th so far this year, but this is now starting to hit, especially with the way Radiance and Sanguine have been lately. 4th, maybe even able to rise into 3rd-place team if they can keep this up against these top teams. It's been very good for them, and you know, I was actually looking at it. Adapting, it's been highlighted, didn't really have that great of a game. There were several times where, I mean, even here, he's 2 levels down, and that's about 11 minutes into the game. But I think Scary D, Cuvo, and Paul played out of their minds throughout all of this. Scary D specifically, I think towards the latter half of this game, just kind of started popping off. Like, there's a certain moment where this Amaterasu showed no fear anymore, and Scary D really got to showcase what he had.
A great team at playing with a lead. I think PK are, I mean, that's what they showed us as part of the Worlds run as well, is how good this team is at capitalizing when they have their leads. But this is also a team that I think just knows how to play well together. Really impressed with some of the stuff we were able to see Paul doing in this set. I don't know if we doubted the success of the Camazotz, but we said there were better picks to take into that situation. Well, Cubo Fred certainly showed us that he can make Camazotz work. 6-0-5 was the performance that he had on this one too. And I think that PK are also showing us that they know the right stuff to prioritize in their draft. Both of these games, they made sure to take the Amaterasu and the Sobek with their top 2 pick score, making sure that they had locked down what their engage was going to be, what their frontline presence was going to be, what Neil and Scary D were going to be doing, and they absolutely executed on it. Zapman is able to free cast his Heimdall in the back because he has all that frontline set up here for him in the game, and they made sure to prioritize it in the drafting phase both games.
And honestly, I was looking at it. It's not often that this stat really ever stands out on the screen, but 28 wards placed by Neil as well. Like, just vision for the Knights, I think, being able to showcase how he used that lead that they had. So making sure that he was in the right place, like you said, creating a very good cushion for everybody else there. And you have to watch this. Sanguine, you know, they're 6-5 right now. The Knights are 6-6. Sanguine with one more game to play, today. And I believe with the Knights playing again and just a couple days up against the, I believe it's Obey later this week. So they've got this at least capabilities laid out for them to maybe jump the hurdle into the top 4.
Certainly at that 500 mark now, at that 6-6 record. So that puts a lot of pressure, I think, on this very next set. We're about to watch Sanguine play where PK could tie back up. And then because they both have sets later on this week, PK Obey and Sanguine Obey, we have our new 4th place team potentially, or Sanguine could obviously right the ship if they're able to get a win up against Ghost or Sanguine, or Ghost or up against Obey. Their sets they have a little bit later on. So a lot, I think, to be determined throughout this weekend, not just in that 4th place matchup and how that's going to be going, but are Radiant going to be able to bounce back, right, and get things going? Are Obey going to continue surging? A lot to learn from these sets that we're about to watch throughout the rest here of this weekend. But the team that won here today, PK, are the team that are feeling good. Zapman is the one that's standing by for the post-game interview.
That's right. Zapman is now with me. First of all, Zapman, congrats to you guys, not only on the 2-0 over Radiance today, but you beat Sanguine last week as well. You're now on back-to-back wins, especially over these top 4 teams. Do you think that this Knights squad is finally starting to hit that stride and you can get some wins against effectively anyone in this league on a pretty consistent basis?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's getting close to the Worlds. You know, it's almost October, so it's time for us to stop playing a little crazy, stop trying to do all this nonsense stuff that we do all the time, and we're kind of focused on being disciplined. That's why you saw some of those games, even though we had leads, they kind of took long to close out just because we're trying to play clean, practice our sieges and things like that. So, yeah, we're definitely hitting our stride.
Yeah, it absolutely worked for you guys. And one of the big pieces of utility, damage and CC, I suppose, in both games was Hebo for Paul. Are you surprised at all that teams are still consistently giving that pick over to you guys? I mean, it seems about as automatic as it comes there in the mid lane. At what point do teams maybe start to prioritize that ban-wise against you guys?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure we have a losing record with Hebo overall, which is kind of funny because one of Paul's signature picks.
Right.
But, you know, we don't really care if they ban it out because we don't think people can really ban out Paul. A lot of teams like to do that kind of strategy, but Paul has gods you haven't even heard of that he's been playing and practicing. You know what I mean? He's just waiting to bring him out. So maybe they should ban Hebo so we can whip out some of those new picks.
That's right. Yeah, for our sake, maybe bring out something new. For you, the Heimdall worked out here in this set. What do you feel, or how do you feel, rather, about him as a hunter at the moment? Obviously, they banned out Cupid a little bit later on. The Rom was Radiance's first pick priority throughout this set. Heimdall, obviously, still in a really good spot in your eyes.
Heim is decent. He's not really on the top tier like Rama and Cupid. His clear is slow, and his jungle's clear slow early. That's why you don't really see him get picked. He doesn't really get the pressure in lane. But if you can get through that early phase and get your boots online, he's as strong as he was before. So you just got to kind of weather that storm. And it's just a pick I've been liking. I've been going Ichabod third, which kind of helps me against the steroid hunters, which is why you saw me build that against the Rama. And I've just been liking him. He's just kind of like a god I wanted to play this weekend. So it's like, just, you know, pick me Heim.
Yeah, why not? And you were swinging with him by the end of those games. Congrats again, Zapman. Next couple of games for you guys against Obey and Renegade, so definitely something to look forward to there. So best of luck in the future. Everyone at home, stick around. Ghost versus Sanguine up next after this break.
All right, I do have to ask, Zeus, my boy, he's kind of hurt right now. So if you guys were in charge, what are we doing to help out the king? Because he's struggling a little bit. Shinto, I mean, come on, you got to help me out here. What would you be helping Zeus with?
I mean, we can bring like the stone in the tree. That's pretty good. I mean, kind of OP, but I don't know. He's kind of.
I don't even think it would be that OP anymore, dude. I really don't. Because before it was OP. Go ahead.
You have a Cthulhu in the other side, and you're Zeus, and you're like, what the f I'm doing against this? Like you get, versus Amy too, like what I'm doing. I'm just dying.
Yeah.
In Cthulhu.
Yeah, you're just dying to those characters for sure. What was so OP about Zeus 3 stunning before was that you could get 2 charges on them, drop your ult and insta-3, and it would instantly stun them. But now with the detonate change, I don't think it would stun them in the ult if they aren't like dead center. So I don't even know how OP it would be. I think we could get away with it, guys. I mean, that's my opinion here. Dardez, what about for you? What are you changing on the king? Okay, that was some fake news, chat. Let me tell you that everyone involved in that roll queue video was very interested in how to buff Zeus and what we were talking about right there. So make sure you guys go to the SMITE Pro YouTube and check out the actual footage and not this doctored fake news nonsense that they're putting out there in the mainstream SMITE Pro media. Man, Zeus deserves to be buffed. Okay, I can't go on it, Mifflin. I can't, because we've got a death segment to do, and a very good one. I can tell there's going to be a good death segment already. At least we've got a pretty good set to kick us off and talk about, though, because we've got Ghost versus Sanguine, a very, very important matchup for a multitude of reasons. Ghost kind of on the uptrend as of late after a little bit of a slump for them, whereas Sanguine seems to be sliding into their slump right about now.
God, I'm so glad you stopped talking about Zeus. Yeah, Sanguine, I think, have been struggling a little bit recently, but just recently they did have their coach move into the house, so I'm thinking that they could likely get a slight mental reset from that, get a little bit closer work with him to help out with that early game slump that we're really starting to see. I think almost it feels as if Sanguine has shifted up their playstyle or their mentality going to each one of these games. Back at the beginning of Phase 2, it really was, all right, if it's a 45-minute set, or a 45-minute game, you know Sanguine dragged you there, and you know that's exactly what they wanted, and they're likely going to win it in that phase. But it seems like very recently, in the last couple of weeks, they've decided, we want to get involved a little bit earlier on. Let's start fighting in the 3v3. Let's start ganking solo lane. I want to see them get back to that vintage playstyle, because that's what works for these boys.
I think it's a really good point to bring up the fact that their coach has just moved in. Now, Oxy, I knew I was going to mess it up. Oxy, that's what I'm going to call him. I'm just going to stop right there.
Don't call him Oxy.
He has been with this team forever and has been a really big part of this squad. Now, of course, he's been working with them from home, but I think having him in the house with them is going to make a difference for the squad and maybe bring them back to that vintage playstyle like you were mentioning. And this is a team in Ghost that these two teams have usually had pretty close sets with one another. I'd anticipate that it could be something pretty similar here today, but this guy on your screen right now, Panatom, I think he's going to have to step up a little bit and return to form, because I thought he looked great in phase number 1. Phase 2 has been a little bit more of a struggle for him.
Yeah, it seems like as Nemesis is starting to fall out of the God pool, he's really been hesitant to go back to his Mercury. His Thor is likely his best pick, but even then it seems like he's hesitant to go there. I don't think that Panatom has a very strictly defined God pool that he's willing to go to for his own comfort. It seems like he's always trying to fit whatever his team needs, but I think that he's almost shooting himself in the foot a little bit. Sure, you could pick Hunbots if your team needs some CC, but if you're better at Thor, if you're better at Mercury, if you're going to have more impact on those picks, feel free to take them. We need you at your absolute best when you're playing against the absolute best. And against Ghost, we're going to need you shooting at all cylinders.
I think the absolute best jungler right now is Sam for Soccer, so I think it's a good point to bring up because Ghost has really started to rise once again. They had a big setup against SSG, who looked like they might be the undefeated top card as of late. Ghost hands them their second loss in as many sets, and I think that's a good trend for Ghost to start off in. But really, you can go anywhere when talking about this Ghost roster, Mifflin. Not only has Sam continued to show why he is considered the best jungler right now, but Twig has really come into his own. He's been a real contributor here in phase number 2. Mike and Panicat continue to be consistent over in the duo lane, and Fine OK is doing Fine OK stuff over there in the solo lane. I don't know where you try and beat this team consistently.
Well, I think you nailed where you can't beat them immediately, which is through Sam for Soccer. This guy is absolutely so consistent out of mid. I think, if anything, if I'm playing against Ghost and I'm trying to target out anyone on that team, be it through P's and B's, be it through camping, I'm looking at mid. I'm trying to make sure that Twig isn't on one of his signature picks. He's been having a lot of success on Hebo recently. Don't let that happen. Don't let him get that comfort pick. Force him back into something a little bit more uncomfortable. And if you're able to win out through mid, win the 3v3, that's going to have a knock-on effect on literally everyone else on the team. If your mid laner's losing, your jungler is suffering, your support's suffering. I think if Sanguine wants to play that early game strategy that we've been seeing from them recently, it should definitely be focused in the 3v3 in mid.
That's one area that you can try and make it work, but Ghost has dealt with pressure through the mid lane an awful lot this year. I think that's exactly what SSG tried to do to them with that ISIS pick, and that ended up not working out too well for the SSG squad. We'll see if Sanguine has learned from that set as we are ready for picks and bans now for game number 1. Interesting that Gore was talking about Radiance in that first pick slot being much more successful than they were when they were in second pick. Which side do you find to be more impactful right now, Miff? If you were on a team right now, would you rather be having first or second pick?
I think I'm almost always going first pick, but that's been kind of my MO since day one. I think it allows you to control P's and B's a little bit more. In that first pick slot, you're afforded the opportunity to look for those targeted out bans instead of addressing the direct meta, because you're going to get the first pick of whatever's left over no matter what. So you can leave some of these more insane characters open. If a Yamoja gets through, or Persephone, you can control how many of those absolute SSS tier picks get through, and then get it for yourself. So I think that's where I would definitely like to be.
Looks like Sanguine is going to use their opportunity in first pick in order to ban some interesting selections that Ghost have been going for. Heard in the first set that Ghost is tied with PK for the most Hebo picks in the league. They won't get another one here as Sanguine takes that away. And the Ymir first ban by Sanguine. Mike looked fantastic on this pick last week, but good enough to warrant a number 1 overall ban? I'm a little surprised.
I wouldn't be banning out the Ymir, but I can understand where this fear is coming from. Aggro, Mike threw up a wall off an enemy Sobek plucking his ADC, and he put the wall between the Sobek and the ADC. The pull still comes through, but they're separated perfectly. That's unparalleled precision. So I think if you're going to be playing at that level, get rid of the Ice Giant. It makes sense to me. This guy was playing absolutely perfect on that pick. Sure, the god in and of itself might not have the strength, the merit of ban, but when PBM's bringing out 100%, I mean, just full cowling 100%, you might as well address it.
Listen, man, that might be one of the best support plays we'll see this year, but Hercules is open now. That's all I'm saying, is that Mike's been doing it on Herc for a while now, and it is available. We'll see if Sanguine wants to take it themselves, but with Persephone left open, wouldn't be surprised to see them go that direction. They are hovering that pick right now for Shinto, and no doubt that's what they will go to. Whether Shinto ends up carrying the games or not, a lot of times that seems to be Sanguine's strategy, funnel him farm, let him set up. But I was noticing, Miff, especially against E United, where Sanguine lost that set, Shinto was uncharacteristically rusty in that set. Maybe rusty's the wrong word, but off his game in that one by my estimation. I thought his relic usage was much worse than it usually is. I'm going to be looking at what Shinto can do, especially now that they first picked him his god, and to see if he's starting to improve again back to where he was during all of Phase 1.
And putting someone who's looking a little bit rusty on potentially the most mechanically demanding god in the game might be a double-edged sword. We already see that Persephone's got a sub 50% win rate in the SPL as a whole, and that's because she is so insanely difficult to play. We like to meme on her. If you plan on dying, she's probably the best god to play because she's going to come back and potentially kill you post-mortem. But if you're not getting value out of these ultimates, if you're not hitting them consistently, if you're not making perfect use of these plants, a lot of the strengths of this god are instantly mitigated, and you're going to need to play pretty perfectly when you're playing against Ghost Gaming, Panda Cat, and Polar Bear Mike on Cupid and Hercules, potentially the most aggressive lane in the game. Ghost is looking pretty strong with these top two.
Solidify that left side of the map. Makes total sense to me. Ghost has done that a lot during this year, but Sanguine gonna immediately get Netroid, one of his signature picks in the Jingwei, and Panatom locks in that Nemesis. Now a 61% win rate for this pick, is despite the astronomically high pick percentage alongside ban percentage. Normally when gods are this ubiquitous, they don't win that much, but Nemesis has been. Not sure if it's been the best pick, though, for Sanguine. Panatom has not looked as comfortable on this god as some others.
He hasn't. It was one of the ones in the beginning of the phase that he was really struggling to find that value on, but I think he's been kind of throwing his head into this pick for so long now that he's starting to really get value out of it. It's a pretty strong counter pick into Cupid. It's pretty good into Hercules as well to try and strip away some of his defense. With Persephone finding an ultimate on someone just to lock him down, Nemesis can follow it up with hers. All of a sudden it's a sitting duck that's incredibly squishy as well. So I think it fits the draft pretty alright. There's a Willix, on the other hand, coming through from Ghost. It's a pick that I'm a huge fan of, but it's got a 0% win rate in the SPL. It's very volatile. Her early game is incredibly strong, but it takes a lot of execution in the late to still find value on a pick like a Willix. But 0% win rate, we haven't seen Sam play it yet. Now that we are, it could probably go up.
Especially when you look at the Jingwei and the Persephone on the other side, plus you've got a Herc already there to supplement that little bit of gravity surge setup. I like the Willix pick, and it certainly is going to throw Sanguine into their draft again to figure out what they're going to pick, because maybe Yarkor might have to change up what he wants, or Rongyu, depending on what they were planning on picking. Nike and Anubis banned by Sanguine. Anubis, interesting here. Miff, what are your interpretations of that ban?
I was really hoping you would have nailed it first, because if you throw it to me, I can only say Anubis bring pressure, dog go burr, it's a ton of damage output. I think, truthfully, they're likely concerned about just that burst damage potential. Persephone's got that pretty short-range leap. It's not really enough to find yourself outside of the Death Gaze range. Nemesis, if she uses her 3 a little bit uncautiously, could immediately have it stunned out by Anubis, and then trade out the majority of his health bar there. I mean, Anubis makes sense into Ghost Gaming just because it's one of the highest pressure picks in the game. What does Ghost Gaming like to do? They like to pressure the entire map. But insofar as a ban, I don't think it's really necessary, especially considering you have a Nemesis, you have a Persephone, and a mobile mid lane mage. I'd love to play against that.
Well, it leaves open the King Arthur, and that's exactly what Final K is going to go for. It feels like Fine is one of the few that is still consistently going to this Arthur, just as it feels like Yarkor is one of the few that is now consistently going back to this Cthulhu. I know Benji played it last set, but for the most part, Cthulhu picks have really fallen off a cliff, and it's for good reason. Statistically, he has really, really struggled. He has the most losses of any god so far in Phase 2, as Mulan, the final pick, there for Rongyu in support. An interesting draft here from both sides, I'd say. Some picks we don't always get a chance to see. Which one do you like more going into game number 1?
I mean, you knew the answer to this question before you asked it. It's 100% Ghost. We got PBM on Herc. We've got Sam for Soccer, a dude who was able to drop 20 kills 2 weeks ago in a singular game, playing an early game assassin inside of a Willix against a team that already has jumps with teammates on his team that have knockups to set up for Gravity Surge. Fine OK on one of his signature picks, a late game win condition inside of Olarun. I think you're losing money if you bet against Ghost here.
Listen, man, Sam's the guy that had the best triple-double of the year so far in the jungle, but I don't think Ghost is going to be looking for those kind of stats. Hopefully try to avoid those 10 deaths for him this time around at the very least. I'm interested in this Mulan support, though. Do you think that's enough pressure to relieve that Cupid Hercules kill lane?
Mulan is a pick that is almost similar to Ymir in that if she gets shut down in the early game, comeback potential isn't there. Her ultimate will turn her into a sitting duck. Her sustain takes a very long time to come online. Poke potential can't really match what Hercules is bringing either. But if they do pull ahead, it could work out. It's just, then you're talking about which ADC meshes better with that aggressive playstyle, Jingwei or Cupid. I think Cupid's going to be able to follow up on what Hercules is doing a lot more easily than vice versa.
Interesting little interaction, though, that I just thought about. If you Jingwei one underneath where your Mulan is pulling the enemy, because that character is coming in towards you, your Persistent Gust should send them launching onto your side of the map. So you should go pretty far off of that. That's a little interesting interaction I'm looking forward to seeing here, potentially, for Sanguine, if they can get it working. Olaron, the final pick there for Ghost, in for Captain Twig in the mid lane. Is that the type of teamfight presence that you think Ghost might have been lacking?
I think it's going to be a huge tool here for sure, just that no-play zone inside of the Sanctified Field. It's how well is Ghost going to be able to play around this Cthulhu. If he's able to use Descent into Madness and just dive your backline, this Oleron's going to have a hard time, but Ghost has a ton of damage output on their team. I don't think they have to struggle around that too much.
Sanguine versus Ghost Gaming. Let's see which team's able to find the Game 1 victory. Throw it down to Finch and Gormizer for Game number 1.
Thank you, Aggro and Myth. It is indeed Finch and Gore here as they move into game number 1 with Sanguine and Ghost. Perhaps some action going to be happening here right away based on these drafts that we were just looking at here, Gore. We are indeed moving right into the action. Yarkor is still one of the few people out there playing Cthulhu over there in the solo. Wrong you with Mulan support. An Anubis ban came out there as well. Lots of interesting stuff to break down here.
And honestly, the thing that was most interesting to me, I'm going through all of the numbers I can while they're locking this stuff in, just to know like what we're looking for. You know, Cupid won an overwhelming amount of his games last week. I think it was 6 out of 7 he was able to win. But the one that stood out to me the most is even though they've only played it a few times this phase, Sanguine have won every Mulan game they've locked in. And it's something that's interesting. I had talked to them a little bit about Mulan, because Yarkor played a little bit of it in phase 1. We've seen Wrong You play some of it throughout, here and there. And they really do view it as this really high-pressure, early-game-oriented, warrior that if you send into the dual lane, theoretically is going to give you some of the same capabilities this Hercules is. And it's going to be in different forms, right? You're not going to have a direct one-to-one comparison. But it also can interrupt Herc in some of his moments, maybe help peel for Netrioid in the right moments. I think this was a pick that is strictly meant to keep up with PBM. I'm just excited to see if that works out for him.
Me too, because it's not a winning strategy long term, I don't think, to try and match Mike's pressure in early game support. Maybe if you're Aurora, but even Radiant's been struggling in that department lately. So we'll see how Wrong You does, trying to keep even with Polar Bear and Mike. For what it's worth, I do think Wrong You is one of the unsung heroes of this Sanguine roster. I know that joining me on that has been Aggro is some trouble now for Netroid. Great work by Mike to push him out, but the peel was there. As you mentioned, Wrong You keeps the pressure off, and Netrioid is able to survive. And that's one of those things that we were talking about, me and Aggro. Wrong You so often is a huge part of what Sanguine's able to do successfully. It kind of quietly for them, but nonetheless there, and being this ever-present extra bit of support and peel.
I mean, yeah, you go back again to phase 1 in the history for Sanguine. I feel like the Horus pick really kind of solidified where Wrong You was for this team. And since then, I almost always look towards him. Most of these teams, you're looking at the jungler. Even for Ghost Gaming, I'm looking towards Sam to have a big performance. Although I think Ghost also, because of PBM's clout and everything that he's been able to do in his tenure as a SMITE player, definitely awards him someone that you have to pay attention to in this. But I think Wrong You gives me more of a factor into Sanguine's win potential than what you see out of Panatom.
Sam makes his way over, driving strike pins the Mulan up against the wall, and Sam able to find the first blood for Ghost. And this is what not just a Wheelish, but Sam in particular can do, as they are indeed able to strip away the purple buff as well, Gore, is that they're able to look for this pressure right from the beginning of the game.
And I mean, immediately, you can see Sam's deep in the jungle still. He's not letting up. And that's something, again, this Wheelish doesn't come through too often for them. But when it does, Sam really wants to get aggressive on it. And there's a lot of knockups where, well, on the left side of the map that are going to be very consistent for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he just hangs out over there in the duo lane for a little while to synergize well with that Hercules. Once they go into mid, it's going to be very awkward for Shinto, I think, to find a lot of counter pressure. And so theoretically, even though Twig early on probably not going to be doing a great job keeping up with what Shinto should be able to do on this Persephone, he's going to have the advantage because of the bodies surrounding him and Sam and PBM that he shouldn't struggle too much.
Hopefully he shouldn't. We'll be able to see what the strategy is going to be. We saw the red buff get invaded, but the blue buff was invaded in response. Sanguine stole the blue away from Ghost. Ghost stole the red away from Sanguine. And so far, Ghost to the team that's come out on top. A little over 1,000 gold out in front already with that first blood bounty to their name. Sanguine trying to freeze the wave a bit closer to their tower and buy themselves a little bit of safety. But I don't know if I like this. When you're playing Mulan, or I feel like you really want to be able to get active, right? You want to be able to get that passive going, that training arc passive for her as often as possible by using your abilities on as many people as you can. And I know they've lost pressure. It's probably a death wish to walk in there and just fight right away. But also, if you're playing this god, you'll want to be able to mix it up to get in there and get active so you can get your abilities leveled.
Especially because Mulan benefits so much. I mean, you get a heal when you're able to level up your 2s. So all of a sudden, you're able to at least sustain a little bit more, and you know that's what Rong Yu really wants. And it's funny because you know look through all of her abilities, and she's got a lot of good that's built into her kit. You know, attack speed that's going to come through, movement speed that's going to come through as she levels things up. But it's because they take so long to get going, especially when you start to fall behind as they are now for Sanguine. I don't know that Rong Yu's going to be able to use her to the full potential that you want in the early game, which means they might start to miss out a little bit on what this Mulan's going to bring for them. Even when her ult comes online, there's a lot of standing in place for Mulan ult, and even with the mitigations you get, that's a lot of damage you'll take.
Well, Panatom's now in trouble. FineOK was able to get the stun. There's Suku to close the gap. Ultimate comes out from Panatom so they can look for the trade. Sam appears to be done with this engagement, but FineOK isn't. That's because Twig is on the way, but Panatom and Yarkor get just barreling underneath the tier 1 tower. They live. Meanwhile, Mike goes for the solo invade on red. That does not work, but at the very least, Ghost pressure on right nets them the blue buff invade. Twig taking some dangerous pathing underneath with no backup from Sam as they've gone back to get the kill on the Yarkor, who's in some trouble. Sam for Sucker finds 2 already here for Ghost in the early game.
You know, there's a lot of things to ban in a game against Ghost Gaming. My brain keeps going back to that Anubis, which only could have been to maybe burn down this Cthulhu a little bit more because of what we've seen there. But Ghost
I
Gaming
wonder if that was a
gets
solo
so
ban.
many strong picks. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I was wondering. And it must be so Yarkor doesn't have that happen to him, but unfortunately Ghost just showed that they can do that still, right? I mean, they came in, killed him off. Granted, it was a pretty heavy rotation, and that's what Cthulhu needs, but at this point, Cthulhu has been losing more games than he won at the beginning of Phase 2. Yarkor was one of those more successful solo laners. I just don't know if I'm fully convinced and sold on it again, because it has not been successful as of late.
Hasn't, as Sam is again getting aggressive in mid, looking perhaps for some kind of gank, but a Panatom Rong Yu goes in with the ultimate and is now a sitting duck in the back line. That's free for Mike to clean up. Sanctified Fuel from Twig is what guarantees it as they split that fight off from Shinto, even with that grasp of death. And now, with 3 kills, every single one of which has involved Sam for Soccer, Sanguine have got to be feeling the heat a bit. This Wheelish is exactly dictating the pace. Wherever it is that she goes, death seems to follow.
And it's exactly what we want to see. Honestly, this is what I was hoping to see, more or less, out of the Mulan. Early pressure, a lot coming from Sanguine. It just seems like Sam maybe picked up all of the notes that Rong Yu was supposed to get for this one and has decided to do them all himself. Good knock-up, and again, good synergy, especially now with the ult online between him and PBM. This is a really good roaming duo in the jungle. And I'll be honest, Sanguine, they don't have a lot of ways to get away from it.
Great driving strike into Heart Bomb combo. Rong Yu already low and forced to disengage. So the red buff Now looking better for Ghost, but Rongyu comes in anyway. Ghost don't have some of the best team fighting ultimates like Fields of Love and Sanctified Field, so Sanguine keep on pushing. Rongyu looking for Mike. The pull is there, but beads end up coming out. That means Sam can't pull him in. They were going for the combo, but it does not work. But somehow Ghost make it out of there without losing any lives, I think. No, they weren't able to get the red. Netroy defends it, and Ghost leave with nothing.
And being able to walk away with your buff alive, and you pulled all 4 of the ults from Ghost Gaming without losing anything, I'd say you're pretty solid for Sanguine. Like, as weird as it is, keeping that neutral was a win for them, right? You're taking a little bit of farm away from Ghost, slowing them down ever so slightly, because you had highlighted about 1,000 gold between the two teams, what, 5 minutes ago? Maybe less, maybe more? It's escalating pretty quickly. 2,000 gold now separate these teams, and it's starting to approach the point where we can start saying 3,000. They're 2,300 total. That's insane farm for 8.5 minutes in.
Twig under a ton of pressure in mid, though. Grasp of Death plus Panatom means there's no way out of there for the mid laner for Ghost Gaming. So Sanguine get their first kill on the board, as we'll be working, try and get you all back into the game here as soon as possible. But just on cue, it looks like Sanguine are getting a bit aggressive, and Twig kind of likes these low mobility mid laners, but it does mean he can get picked out occasionally if you're willing to hard commit.
I mean, we've highlighted it so many times. Ola Run, is the ult up? If no, then go, right? Like, if they don't have beads, then it's an easy kill. If he does have beads, you're getting your beads guaranteed. So no matter what, you're able to find that pressure. And that was just a lot of burst damage as well. I think faster than Twig, and honestly, even I was expecting to see come down from Sanguine in an instant. And at this point, it's finding kills like that. Find the little picks. Find the things that have been happening to Rongyu, and then turn it into farm and gold, right? You're trying to chip away at this lead that Ghost have already built up, and that's not going to be easy to do. With this Hercules, especially the way PBM plays it, translates really well into the late game, so you have to pay attention not only to the knockups, this early game fighting, but now we're transitioning into the mid game, how that's going to relate to Sam and his positioning, the Ola Run if Sanctified Fields are up, Fields of Love, because we've seen these rotations be solid from Ghost already. There's a lot of factors playing into this right now that Sanguine, unfortunately, are having to climb uphill against.
And another thing to note here with Twig's build, he's gone this Hunter's Blessing start. He's on the Cursed Orb, working towards Doom Orb now, and he has the Shoes of the Magi. So this build, as of now, has no CDR in it, which you usually want quite a bit of for Olarin. You want those ultimates up as often as possible. But here, they're going to have to make sure they're getting maximum value to those first ultimates. And you remember the one he used in mid to kind of isolate Rongyu. I don't know if I'm completely sold on that being 100% necessary. That's part of their strategy, though. They want to isolate Rongyu with all their ults, but they didn't have it for that red buff invade. They didn't have Fields of Love either. And now here they are in mid, again, without some of those cooldowns, without some of those ults, and Twig ends up paying for it a little bit. It's only a small answer back. Ghosts have tons of control here so far, but just one thing to kind of take note of in the way that Twig has started to build so far, because he started Hunter's Blessing.
Especially, not only like the Hunter's Blessing, like you said, no real cooldown built in there. That ult is insanely long, and you have to be patient with it because of the cooldown. And when you use it, like you said, for maybe finding a single pick, that can be solid for getting you a lead. But now that he's died, once over there in mid lane, you have to wonder where they're going to start going, right? He recognizes now, I'm a target. Is he going to save these to try and stay alive a little bit more often? Are they going to be more team-oriented? Especially because, I think we've seen more groupings from Ghost in 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes of play than we've really gotten to see pretty much any other team do. I mean, even in the last set we just watched, things were pretty slow early on, or one team really started to take, I think the Knights in Game 2 really started to escalate and pull things away in their favor. But Twig, they're looking like they're going to be grouping up more often. And I think Sanctified Fields, which is just now off cooldown, once he respawns, they'll have it. Those are those moments, and that's that kind of ult that you really would love to have around a Gold Fury to stop Sanguine from having any fight potential over there.
And again, certainly not, a misplay or anything here from Ghost.
Oh, no, not at all.
Right, one more of those things we're kind of keeping our eye on how they're using one of those cooldowns in a world where it is perhaps a little bit more important than normal that it is used correctly. He's got the Doom Worm finish now. That is a ton of power, movement speed, all things that Ola Run certainly wants to try and get that passive online as soon as possible. He can start critting as no other mage can. Twig even getting aggressive, looking to steal red. Gets there too late, though. And Sanguine defend that one successfully on their own. But Sam's still looking around the jungle too. Ghost has really gone out of their way here in the early game to try and strip away farm from Sanguine to try and take away this red, the blue, those back harpies, whatever is up. They're stepping forward and looking to take.
I mean, it's really hard to counter this much aggression. I'm trying to think of ways for Sanguine to fight into this. If Shinto has his ult up, which he does now, and can find him in the right grouping, that's going to be huge, along with Panatom finding one person to shred, at least in terms of single isolation. That's a lot of lockdown. But, I mean, you're seeing Panda Cat rotate to mid to help Twig out just a little bit with farm. I think now starting up the Gold Fury, not going to be pulling it fully, but just showcasing how aggressive Ghost want to be. King Arthur's over in the back camps.
Nice work there from Mike to get the beads out from Shinto. I believe he didn't even use the driving strike, so held on to it. Shinto takes some mental damage from it, knowing that the driving strike was never coming, but you got to use it there either way. Mid, tier 1 appeared to be the target, but Ghosts have already fallen back and given it up. Now that they got those beads out from Shinto, I think they're good to go here, Gore. They'll come back a little bit later on if need be, and then clean up the kill. But look how far back Shinto is standing. He's not giving anything up to Ghost for free as Final K rotates over after the proxy to steal some farm.
I mean, Final K has just been hanging out in this side of the jungle. Honestly, the right side of the jungle feels like all of it. It belongs to Ghost Gaming. They own it where things are going. They haven't quite made it down to the speed buff, but you've got proxy farm from Final K. Him, as well as Sam, as well as PBM have been getting aggressive. And once again, Finch, they're starting up this Gold Fury.
And it's already done. Ghost able to take the objective. Panda Cat took a lot of damage when tanking it, but it just didn't matter. Sanguine didn't come up to contest. I really think from the way that they're positioning and standing right now, they do not want to take any affirmative fights. They are starting to set up for defend. I think they had a sentry down near these back harpies where Panatom is, exactly like he's doing. They've been de-warding over there, but they're not getting aggressive and looking to take any kind of even battles right now with Ghost.
I mean, it's hard to try to. I mean, even here, look, there's 2 people, now 3 people on PBM, and they still aren't doing enough that he feels like he's in true danger, especially because Final K's around the corner. He's backing, because I think he was planning to anyway, right? It's just a little addendum that has slowed him down. And the fact that Ghosts are warding off 2 people, 3 people with 1 or 2, they're winning a numbers fight that they are just at a disadvantage in. It makes no sense to fight a 2v3 and still come out on top, but they're doing it.
Sam looking for Yarkor in right, maybe a bit early with that Suku. Either that or Yarkor never turned around, so no knock-up for Sam. The ultimate comes out from Yarkor in response. This feels more defensive than anything. Certainly not going to get a kill, but there's also action in mid. Wrong you steps forward. Polar Bear Mike also steps forward. Look for the pull onto Panatom. Does bring him in, but does not get the beads out from him. He used the dash instead, but Sam rotating back in, and Wrong you isolated. Good ultimate. Gets him out of the sanctified field, but roots him next to Sam, who happily takes the kill. And now they're looking to lock down Panatom, who has already used the beads. Barely gets out of there as Ghost are rotating around the map, hungry for fights.
And that's just unfortunate for Wrong Yu because he's in a position where that's the only way to get out of here, much like Netroid is in a bad position. With Panatom rotating in, they might be able to at least save his life, but turning it around, I don't know. PBM's in the neighborhood.
But the grasp of death from Shinto gets the return kill onto Panda Cat, almost from Mike enough to keep Panda Cat alive. I just think Netroid did a good job of kind of baiting Panda Cat in with Panatom on the way. So it ends up being 1-for-1 jungle for Hunter Gore. Which way do you think that ends up falling in favor?
I feel like it hurts Ghost a little bit. I mean, there's a 2-level difference there between Panatom and Panda Cat. And so getting rid of Panatom, maybe not really much for Ghost Gaming. Picking up Panda Cat at least is going to get Shinto some farm that he's needed. Unfortunately for Sanguine, any amount of farm, any kills you get do seem to get nullified by then another flurry of kills that come through. Although Yarkor just defended himself, I think not only turning it around onto Sam, but slowing Final K down.
Yeah, in the 1v2, Yarkor able to get the kill. The tower was at like 1 HP. Why did they not put any damage into it? And now Final K narrowly avoiding the mire coming out from Yarkor. So able to narrowly make it out of there, but that is huge a play from Yarkor to be able to find that 1v2, get the kill into Sam, and slow down this Awelish that has been such a problem for them.
I mean, they're just getting incredibly aggressive, I think, on Ghost. And right now, it's not paying off as much as it was a few minutes ago. You get Panda Cat losing because of, or at least dying, I should say, because of their aggression there. Sam going down once, but they are still doing things like this, forcing beads, forcing Netroid to use almost all of his defensive cooldowns. Ult's still available now. Soon enough, you can expect that to disappear, and they're doing it well enough that there's a minute and a half before a Fury spawns. They could pressure a Pyromancer at any given time. Sanguine are not in a good position to try and fight around objectives. Even with Yarkor starting to level out the lead, FineOK's gotten. I just don't see this Cthulhu making the same big rotations we've seen out of the King Arthur just yet.
It has been a rough game from so far as Wrong You, perhaps exemplifying that, has to use the ultimate defensively, and I think he wants that ult later as Wrong You now being cut down by FineOK, who just doesn't have the damage. Great blink from Wrong You and he makes it out, but now Panatom is the target. Boulder comes through but doesn't get a lot of damage as FineOK is low. Sanguine go for the knockup. FineOK in some trouble, but Yarkor swaps targets back towards Twig, stuck in the middle of everybody, but in comes Panatom, but the Sanctified Field's even better. Put down the Nemesis in favor of Ghost, and Polar Bear Mike once more blinking in, looking for the knockup, can't find it. Driving Strike lets him reposition, but they pull in Panda Cat, who's also in trouble. Sanguine, they may be on the back foot, but they're certainly fighting back, and Shinto gets the first kill as Sam comes back in as well and trades his life.
Alright, so there were a lot of moments in that where Ghost were winning, and so heavily. I mean, it felt like a predator playing with their food at that point. And then they went back in, and that's the key. Like, Panda Cat, I think you just have to, as Ghost Gaming, hold that L. He's going to go down there. I don't think there's a way to save your Cupid. I'm curious as to what got Sam to go back in. The fact that he trades out a kill is phenomenal for him. It is a little interesting to see them jump back into what felt like a surefire death at that point. Because they'd already overstayed their welcome. I mean, Ghost Gaming were down there for so long, all so low in their health and their mana bars. Yet they still wanted to aggress. I think they had a huge win coming into it, and still honestly are walking away with a huge win. I mean, even if those kills don't all go in their favor, they're 4,000 gold up right now. They're keeping Sanguine on their toes, they're locked down, and it's almost too much action for a team like Sanguine, right? We talk about them all the time about their late-game teamfight potential, but you're not going to make it to a late-game teamfight if Ghost Gaming keep this amount of pressure up, because you're always having to fight. You can't get any farm going. You're down 1 level in the jungle, 13 to 14, but 2 levels there in support, 11 to 13. It's going to start making bigger differences as the game goes on.
Well, that's the Pyromancer for Sanguine, unanswered by Ghost. They start up the Gold Fury in response. But Netroid is nearby as the Fury gets burned quickly. Ghost take the Primal, no contest from Sanguine. They settled for the Pyromancer instead, but just kind of the order of events might surprise you, but that's what they were doing. They gave up the Fury to go take the Pyro, and Sanguine, or rather Ghost, just took the Fury on the backside of it. So this has been better from Ghost, I think, coming over and playing around these objectives. It's when they're overstepping a bit, getting too aggressive in the jungle, and not really fighting around any big prize, that things are getting a little bit more skeptical for me, and I think they need to make sure they're playing around these big team fighting ultimates. If Panda Cat and Twig have these ultimates up, then you've got to think Ghost are heavily favored even into some of these CC mid ultimates. Sam takes the battle up against Panatom in right, has to leap away, but Panatom now heavily isolated. Sanctified Field clips him a little bit, and it does speed Twig up, but it's another one of those ultimates that have a bit of a question mark on him. Sam blinks in to secure it, and no way for Panatom to make it out of it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that Sanctified Field's largely unnecessary. You know, like you said, it speeds Twig up, and maybe that helps close the gap, but he doesn't get a lot of damage there at the very end. Sam and his blink do find that kill. And it showcases another thing that, you know, even though Sam has a substantial lead and has been doing well, Panatom can still win 1v1s. It's just so hard to find a 1v1 right now.
Yarkor and Wrong You force Ghost off of the Fire Giant for now. It is still leashed, though, and low. Finally gets reset as the Grasp of Death comes to the fight, but poor Wrong You is absolutely in the wrong neighborhood. Sam for Sucker takes care of him to improve to 6 total kills. They push Yarkor back, and that's another kill for Ghost. FineOK wants to get involved, his first kill of the game. Meanwhile, Netroid does split push the tier 2 tower in left as Ghost start up the Fire Giant. It looks like they'll send FineOK back to make sure they do not lose a Phoenix, but this FG belongs to Ghost.
And that, honestly, that's standard Sanguine. I can't count how many times we have seen them, honestly, at around an 18, 19, 20-minute mark. A Fire Giant's going on, they're down a substantial amount of gold, and Netroid goes to the other side of the map, and he split pushes. Normally, they're on Chaos side when I see them do that, but I think it doesn't matter which side of the map you're on if you're going to be able to bring the same amount of pressure, because you know you're about to lose gold. You have 3 tier 2 towers left standing and 5 people with Fire Giant on the other side. You're not going to be playing the numbers game advantage there. But what you did do is open up that Phoenix, and you've made it a little bit better and alleviated some of the pressure for your team, so that when this oppressive Fire Giant buff wears off from Ghost Gaming, well, then you're all of a sudden in a position to fight back for the next one. You're not necessarily out of it completely. You can defend your Phoenixes now a little more feasibly because you got some of that gold online, and if you win one team fight, you have an avenue to success. You can break down that Phoenix and go into the Titan room. So they give themselves win conditions, even when it feels like everything is falling apart.
Poor Roggy, he was the one that got singled out and pulled in by Mike. On the tail end of that ultimate, he does end up standing still, but in comes Yarkor and the rest of the boys to back up Sanguine. Yarkor on the ultimate does push out a couple, but Rongyu gets pulled back towards the rest of the team. Good ultimate, though, from Shinto. Keeps Rongyu alive. Mike gets traded out for Yarkor, and Rongyu, who's already in grayscale, finally gets pushed all the way to the other side into the afterlife, and Ghost come away with the 2-1, only trading away their Hercules score.
Now you have a Cupid and an Olaron that are going to look down your towers. If I was an objective, at least one of the structures on the map, I'm scared. I don't know that Phoenixes can feel fear, but I would if I saw these two gods looking to barrel down at me, especially because they're collapsing in on Panatom, they're splitting up. They recognize that they have all of the pressure they need to take objectives, because just Panda Cat or just Twig here with a Fire Giant buff should be able to help find one tower, one Phoenix. Both of them is going to just shred any structure that stands in their way.
Looks like they give up on the right side Phoenix for now. They still have Fire Giant for a good little while, a little over a minute. So they've got some time to work with. They're going to go grab this left wave and push that up so they can take this tier 2 tower here and left. But Sanguine, man, they are struggling to find their footing. I think that Rongyu's lawn never got started here in this game, even losing pressure in lane to Mike and the Cat. Sam has been too destructive at 6-2 and 3 so far this game. Helped to put Yarkor behind over there against Fine OK, helped in duo, helped in mid. This has not been Sanguine's game. They never got to get to the point. It feels like this game's not over, but Ghost just so far in the lead before Sanguine ever got to Voltron together and form that unbeatable team fight we know them for.
It is weird, though, because you have to think that we're still in a position where if this game goes another 10 minutes, Sanguine are more than comfortable to hold on. There's a minute left on the Fire Giant, but it is one more fight, at least it feels like, around a Fire Giant that's going to determine who can truly win. If Sanguine are able to win this next one, or at least stop Ghost Gaming from winning it successfully, then they're still alive in the game. They have a little bit more time to work with to make things come together. But they did miss that window of opportunity, and I think this is something that is more important to highlight, because their team fight should still be good, but this Mulan just has not been. I mean, Rongyu is 0-5 right now, 3 levels down, 14 compared to PBM's level 17, and you can feel the lack of frontline pressure coming out of Sanguine right now. It's just Yarkor who's able to be, kind of the frontline fighter, and once he goes down, there's not a lot of room for Sanguine to continue their aggression.
And you have to think that this Mulan is on the same track as like maybe a Kuzenbo or a Romana, sort of these gods you can pick up that are tanks that have these long CC immune ultimates, at least the first part there from Rongyu, that can let them get out of Sanctified Field, something you pick up into the Olaron. But even that part of it hasn't worked. I think in part to the fact that Twig has not had any game-ending Sanctified Fields just yet, so it hasn't been super necessary, but also that even when he uses them, he often ends up in another bad spot, out of the frying pan into the fire. He ulted out of one of Twig's ult and landed right next to Sam, who promptly deleted him. So it's tough. It really feels like they haven't quite gotten to this point, but Yarkor is going in, starting up the ultimate. They want this fight, and this feels so ill-advised, but perhaps they can find a way to turn it around. Is scattered. Panatom in trouble, though, in the middle of the fight. Twig putting in plenty of damage, but they able to chase down Panatom, able to chase down Shinto as well, who's still doing damage to the grave, able to find a grasp of death, but now Yarkor, who has de-transformed, gets stunned out by Fine OK, and Panda Cat claims him. Mike elsewhere hunts down Netroid, and that is it. Take us on to game number 2, because Ghost just took care of Sanguine.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and steal the term you had used coming into, or out of that last set, and Mifflin had used. That was just clinical. I mean, it was like a checklist there for Ghost Gaming. They knew what they wanted to do. They're ending this with a 15,000 gold lead. a lot of it early on was, wait, wrong U's going to be a problem. Cool, let's isolate the problem. They killed him off more than anybody else in the game, and that slowly translated into pressure elsewhere. They dominate the duo lane. They start invading red buffs, and with Persephone and, unfortunately, no real Mulan pressure, you can't fight back there. Sam starts to tick up, and then all of a sudden that pressure on the right or left side of the map then translates to pressure on the right side of the map because Sam's getting a lot of farm, so they start putting pressure onto Yarkor. Unfortunately, Panatom and Shinto start to fall behind, and then it all just feels like it crumbles there before it can really, like you said, come together in a full Voltron form there for Sanguine.
Yeah, it really feels like Panatom and Rongyu were the ones that kind of got pushed out by their direct opposition, and that had the spillover effect into mid and solo. Great first game here from Ghost. Can Sanguine bounce back? We'll find out after this break.
As I fell to the ocean floor, fading light through an open door, I saw myself rise with the water. They thought they could keep me down, hold that breath and watch me drown, but all they did is push me higher. We don't care what they say, we will be here all day. We'll stay until it's over, till the world's out of sight. We will stand, we will fight, it's not over till it's over. Through the nights in the rain, through the time and the pain, the stand will never fall. And then at the end of it all, we will win, we will chant, it's not over till it's over.
So stop me if you've heard this one before. Ghost win in 24 minutes, and it was largely due to Polar Bear Mike on an early pressure pick. In this case, it was Hercules completely running the early game and handing the ball off to Sam for Soccer, who played a lot of team fights really, really well. And the whole team of Ghost played really well, and they won in sub 25 minutes. Miff, have you heard that one before?
Yeah, I definitely have, and I don't think we're going to hear the last of it just here. But I do want to make a quick little asterisk on there. He hands off the ball at like the 3-minute mark, and then San Soccer absolutely decimates the entire game for the rest of the time. Jungle diff, jungle diff, jungle diff. And that's really all it was. Yeah. The writing's on the wall. Take a peek at the KDs, the GPM, the damage. Look, literally 2 minutes aggro, 2 minutes hands off the ball, San Soccer on the replays.
Yeah. Listen, man, I'm with you. Every game is jungle diff. It always has been. It always will be. And in this case, it was for Ghost Gaming. Sam with the 5 KDA looking nice and clean, nearly 16k damage in just a 24-minute game is pretty impressive for him. Outside of the one play where he and Final K tried to kill Yarkor underneath his tier 1 tower. That one didn't exactly go Sam's way. This one, however, did. Of course, we're going to put that one on the replay reel. This fight that we're about to go over, though, right here from Sanguine was a little bit odd, wasn't it? I mean, they go aggressive in the mid lane, try to be the initiators. This one confused me a bit, Miff. Maybe they felt like they were just on the timer. They couldn't win if they didn't just surprise Ghost with a random fight in mid.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the meta game that's starting to develop in the SPL when you're 12,000 gold down this early on in the game. They always do seem like they're grouping up as 5. I think the real issue for Sanguine in that team fight in particular is something that happens to teams that have a Cthulhu on it all the time. Yarkor was feeling incredibly confident, goes up into the ultimate, holds his W key for a solid 10 seconds, and then he comes out of the ultimate, he looks around, he's like, all right, well, I knocked up Ghost like 14 times, but my team's not here. They couldn't come up here this far. So the second he pops out of the ultimate, he dies. The rest of his team was slightly out of position, just trying to catch up to him, and then they get chased out as well. I think that Cthulhu in general is almost the god of, I'm going to bait my team. I feel safe. They should feel safe too. And it doesn't always work that way.
Did not in this one. Yarkor finishes 1-4, has the 1 kill in the nice 2v1, but otherwise don't really think we felt his impact as much as we would like. Shinto did have a pretty solid game on the Persephone. We were talking about him going into game number 1. I think he delivered well enough on that pick, but Panatom, yet again, on this Nemesis, sub 6k damage, 1-4 as well for him. I think that a lot of teams are having a bit of identity crisis right now. Radiant's certainly the number 1 team that we talk about having an identity crisis, but feels like Sanguine might be at the same time here, Miff. This would be a lot of consecutive losses for them if they were to lose here, because remember, they went 0-2 last week.
Yeah, I think we'd be coming up on the 3rd straight set loss, and for a team like Sanguine, I think this is a team that is highly emotional. These guys definitely put 100% of themselves into every single game. Their hearts are in it. When they're not playing SMITE competitively, they're playing it in ranked, they're playing it in casuals, they're thinking about it. They got SMITE posters above their beds, so the first thing they see when they open their eyes is, I don't know, Zeus's smiley teeth just looking down on them. These guys
love that poster.
Absolutely love SMITE. I think that they really do need some wins to keep their mental in check.
Let's see if they can find one in game number 2 as we are ready for picks and bans for this one. I think that the jungle picks is one that we're going to keep an eye on here, obviously, but with the way that Cthulhu has been performing recently, I just don't know that he's really worth picking that often at a competitive level. Ranked, sure, he's 1v5 and feel pretty unkillable, but when it comes to the competitive scene, it feels like teams have really figured out how to spread out these team fights, outlast that ultimate, and then take advantage of the fact that he's really not that strong without that ultimate available.
Look, you say not that strong. I would say that Cthulhu is relatively just straight up weak outside of the ultimate. He might be one of the worst soul laners that you can pick when his ultimate is on cooldown. I mean, you can rely on a slight knock-up from his 3 or a very conditional root from the second ability. That first ability is very short range. It doesn't deal a ton of damage. I think that Cthulhu is one of the newest ult bots in the game. We used to say something like that along the lines when you're talking about Odin or when you're talking about Hun bots, but at least those gods have ways to get involved outside of their ultimate as well. And I think that this is something that the SPL is really good at. Every single time one of these Cthulhu ultimates go down, they'll either straight up walk away from you and just continue walking away until it runs out, or they use Sunder, or they have a Nemesis on their team, or an Execute, just to make sure that Cthulhu is just a free, easy, giant target in the middle of your entire team to set up the first kill of the team fight. I think that this pick might be a little bit overvalued, and he's not even picked that often.
So bans the same so far for Ghost, but Sanguine have already switched it up at least in order, though they end up with the exact same 3 bans, Freya, Hebo, and Ymir. It was Yamoja, Ram, and Sobek as the bans for Ghost last time around, and that leaves Ama open. Remember, Sanguine didn't pick it in that top 3, so it ended up not being available for them eventually once they took that Cthulhu, but wonder if they'll switch it up. Ghost actually decide to ban the Cupid this time around. A little bit interesting here, Miff. You just won game 1 in 24 minutes. You stomped in game 1. Why change the ban in this spot?
You know, it just seems like they just want to switch things up. Maybe it's a little bit of a weird flex situation where they just want to show that, okay, we've got an even larger god pool. We know that Panic Hat's very versatile inside of that Hunter role. He could go towards the Oleron. We know he's got a very strong Heimdall as well. Maybe he's just kind of challenging Netroid, saying, okay, you could take your Jingwei again. I'll take Heimdall, who's got a pretty decent matchup there. Or he could even look towards, I don't know, an Artemis that got a recent buff. It is going to be the Heimdall, likely going the way of Panda Cat. But this time Sanguine get away with the Hercules. A little bit of early game aggression going their way. Let's see how PVM decides to address that.
Very interesting. So Hercules is first picked. That leaves Persephone open, as well as that Sobek that was prioritized in the bans by Ghost the first time around. So now they don't go for either of those selections. They go with the Heimdall and the Nemesis right off the bat, giving Sam for Soccer that Nem. But I don't know that Panatom was really going to pick it, Miff, with how that first game went. Feels like a whole lot of change in these picks and bans that I don't know if it was really warranted if you're on Ghost's side.
Yeah, I don't think there was any real reason that they should be switching up their own draft of their own accord after such a convincing win in Game 1. But we can't fault what they've gotten here. It's still individually strong picks.
Sure.
Nemesis, one of the highest priority junglers. Heimdall works incredibly well in that long lane. I would say he's the next tier down, right below that Rom Cupid tier. So I think that they've still gotten away with something strong here. But I think Sanguine have largely come out ahead as well. King Arthur's likely going to have a much better time inside of that soul lane. He won't be as easy to gank as he was in Game 1. Hercules is going to find a lot more pressure. I'd say he's just a better version of Mulan if that is going into the support role. I think by and large, both teams have gotten a little bit better.
Artio, only 2 games played for this god, but usually reserved as a counter pick, seems to be fantastic here against what Sanguine has. That cripple field already has a lot of value against these 3 picks, and that's often when you see this Artio locked in, where the conversation is usually centered around her. How good is that cripple field? In this situation, it looked fantastic for Ghost. Do you like the pick? Most likely for Mike, I would imagine, though, of course, it could go to Final K in the solo lane.
Yeah, I want to hold just the point of it because I think it could be that flex pick. I wouldn't be surprised to see it heading over into solo, but I think it would be much better inside of that long lane just to counteract a lot of what this Hercules is going to be looking to do. Pull-punch combo doesn't exist if a cripple field's inside that lane. I think that it's pretty strong against the 3 core that we see from Sanguine here, but picking your Artio this early on in the draft, it's not a pick that we see too often. I think that had he waited just a little bit longer on this pick, we might have baited Sanguine into taking a couple more gods that would be very tough to work around inside of this cripple field. I think on this unprioritized pick, it might have been better just to wait off until maybe even 6th. But it's a very safe pick in of itself. Artio is very hard to counter out. There's not many direct counters to her. So, I mean, it's not a risk. If you want to wait for your mid laner later on, or if you think Final K is looking for something special out of the solo, this could be a good way to just hold off.
Interesting. Yet again, we see this Anubis ban for Sanguine. We saw it in Game 1. One time, maybe they were running out of bank time and they just looked at the A's and found something. 2 times in a row, though, Mifflin, this Anubis banned away, this time in conjunction with the Poseidon. So it's clearly there against Captain Twig. Something to keep an eye out for, I suppose, with Ghost Gaming, is that pick moving forward. Olarun, once again, the pick, though, for Twig. And I think this time it's a little bit more scary, Miff. I mean, Arthur, Hercules, these are gods that can get on top of Olarun pretty quickly and then be kind of difficult to peel off, even with a Sanctified Field.
I agree completely, and we still haven't seen the jungle pick coming out from Sanguine. With it being Panatom, they could very easily go towards a Thor or even a Ratatasker. That global could also compound the issue that Olarun is already facing with Dive coming from Sanguine's draft. I think it's a strong pick in of itself. I mean, you'll never hear me arguing against Sanctified Fields in a vacuum. Just that ability in itself is so strong that I think it warrants this pick in general, but it is going to be a lot harder to execute on against Sanguine's draft.
And then the Thoth comes in as well for that long-range poke damage against the Olarun, whittle him down a little bit, but it is another god that can struggle against someone like Artio. If you can close that gap quickly, which Blink will often do for you, ends up forcing Thoth beads pretty easily. Pele being hovered, and that's what Panatom will go to. This is a god that I think Panatom does so much better on than something like that Nemesis. I love the switch up here for Sanguine, immediately giving Panatom something much more comfortable.
Yeah, a lot of damage output, still fitting that role of backline dive. Olarun has a very hard time matching up into this Pele. CC immunity from the volcanic eruption is going to make it a lot easier for her to make her way into the backline. The knockup, the burst potential. There's so much that Pele is going to bring to this team, but how much backup is she going to have? If PBM's doing his absolute best on this Artio, if it is going to be that Artio inside of the support role, it's going to be very hard for Hercules or King Arthur to close gap. If Artio decides to dive herself, Thoth's one escape tool, being that second ability, is going to be very hard to get away from, and now he's going to have to contend with slows from Nemesis, as well as the lockdown potential that a Mulan brings. I think Ghost brought a draft that fits their playstyle incredibly well, whereas Sanguine are bringing this draft that fits more into this new age Sanguine that we've been seeing recently, where they like to fight in the early game, which I would still argue is not their strength.
We'll see if Rongyu can have a little bit of a more impactful performance on this Hercules than he did on the Mulan. But speaking of Mulan, she's been locked in as the 10th overall pick for Ghost, and it leaves their draft with more ambiguity still, because we still don't know if that RDO is going to be support or solo lane. Don't think we have to wait too long, though. Game number 2 should be ready to go. Sanguine looking to bounce back up against Ghost.
And they have a lot of bouncing back to do, because boy did they fall in that first game. Ghost made it look easy, taking down one of our other most competitive teams here in Sanguine, but they are in the middle of a slump right now, and it's not going to be easy to recover from it up against Ghost. It will indeed be the Mulan solo, the RDO support. I think that's how they were leaning, wanting to see that RDO over near Hercules on the desk. Gore, how do you feel about the RDO pick here?
I actually really love it. And you're looking at Rongyu, one of the best things Hercules has is his ability to push people, and PBM's going to be able to stop that from happening at least a little more often, so he can peel for Panda Cat a little more consistently. Plus, he's got good stuns, good roots, good healing that's going to be able to come through. I'm really happy to see her back, because it's been a while since we've really gotten to see RDO, and for a while there, I think she was disabled, and now being able to come back into the game, and even though she doesn't see a ton of play, I think PBM has been one of the only supports to pick her up often, and so far has been pretty solid on her every time as well. So I'm just excited for this dual lane all in all.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard not to be here at this point to see how it goes. I mean, Panda Cat and Mike, last time around with that Hercules, took control. Now Rongyu gets a chance to show us what he can do on a little bit of a more consistent pick, as Twig is in trouble in mid. Panatom hunts him down, and Sanguine already answering back here in game number 1. Boy, do they need for Panatom and Rongyu to have better games that we saw last time, and this is a great indication of where they're going. Red buff invade on the back of it.
I mean, that's exactly what you need, right? We talk about Twig, we talk about Olarun. Ult's not available, he's only level 2. You burn the beads, kill him dead. You've got Pele. Get in there and get aggressive. I like that call, and I like what that Shinto, especially on the Thoth, he's going to have the damage to facilitate it. I think a little bit more than that Persephone. So overall, Sanguine just opening up that conversation to be had in the mid lane, specifically for Panatom, who didn't get to show a lot last game. And between that, Rongyu now on the Hercules, which is not something we get to see too often just in general. I'm excited to see what Sanguine can bring here. It feels more aggressive. And as of right now, it is a little more aggressive out of the jungle. We'll have to keep our eyes on the support to see if Rongyu can keep up.
He's had pressure in the long lane so far. They hit level 2 a little bit ahead of Ghost and had him pushed up to the tower line, but now Ghost have that same level 2, level 3 even, both of them ticking over at basically the same time. Might be harder for Rongyu with that cripple field coming out so consistently. Won't be able to find those push-pull combos. There is that cripple field exactly preventing the push from landing on the Panda Cat, who is able to hold on to the purification beads, excuse me. So it's going to be that much harder for Rongyu over there in that long lane. Now that Polyver Mike has all the abilities, he might not be able to get as aggressive as he would like. I wonder if we might see him rotate to try and create some distance between him and this artist.
Yeah, I think a lot of where Rongyu's biggest window of opportunity was is maybe past, like, at least to get hyper aggressive and find easy kills, right? There's still plenty of chances for him to try and turn up, especially because PBM has no mana right now. He's not really going to be able to do too much if they get caught out, and that opens up the conversation for Panda Cat specifically, and you can already see just on the map how aggressive that Hercules is wanting to get. But it's just trying to lock him down. I mean, Heimdall, pretty safe on his own. You add in PBM, who can peel for him when he's there. Worst case scenario, he's not there, you're still alive. PBM, instead, spending his time peeling for Twig, who, as of right now, is going to need it. It looks like that's where Sanguine want to put their aggression and channel all of their, well, maybe everything that happened last game, they're channeling into Twig now.
Mike has been pulled back in. Final Judgment is let loose, but doesn't really find much value. Panda Cat taking the topside rotation, so has not gotten involved in this fight really at all, and he won't, as Sanguine seemed like they kind of got their answer. Final Judgment didn't find much. Nothing else came through, so they're just going to fall back, leave Ghost to be. Sanguine still got the first blood, though. Gore still have about the 600 gold lead or so they're feeling comfortable here at this point, especially with Panatom already 5 as opposed to Sam.
it's enough to keep them, I want to say, just coasting right now, right? They're looking for a little bit more, but it's not the end of the world. Sanguine like to wait until the late game. They definitely have a composition that plays this early game a little bit better, I think, than Ghost has. But they can still wait. They're still a team that is known for their 5v5 as of now. Maybe that's changing, though. The last couple of weeks, again, we were talking about them as maybe another team that had to shake off some rust coming into last week. This week, I think even more so, because last week didn't quite find themselves as successful as they would have wanted. So Sanguine are in that position right now, and Ghost is not an easy team to try and tackle. But if they can turn this even slight early game lead into something bigger, and then it's going to translate incredibly well for them. And already that 600 that you had highlighted has turned into a little over 1,000.
They're holding on to this lead, and remember, Sanguine don't necessarily have to. I mean, they've got this Thoth that would love to scale a bit later, as would the Jing Wei. Maybe it's the Pele and the Hercules that can keep this pressure going, but Sanguine, we know, are this 20-minute and beyond team that love to Voltron together in the team fight stage. So even though they got this lead, I wouldn't be so surprised, Corey, if Sanguine end up kind of coasting with it unless Ghost tries to force the issue. Sanguine are happy to just kind of take the advantage when it shows up and wait till later to finally try and put Ghost to bed. And I think that's conducive with at least some of their draft, even though there might be others that would rather get to work now before rather than later.
I think it is a little bit of what you say, though. They have the good potential for growth later on, but I think Ghost has it a little bit better. I mean, you get the Nemesis, the Oleron, the Heimdall, and the Artio, all, I think, just getting better. Like a fine wine with age, right? Mulan, maybe not so much, but it's fine okay. So you give it a lot of leniency because you know he's going to make it look good late game no matter what. So there's a lot, I think, of growth for Ghost Gaming that Sanguine maybe don't want to let them hit, a 25, 30-minute mark in the game because they might just do a little bit better. And that lets me loop back to what I wanted to start off with, which is Sam on this Nemesis, not only getting maybe stronger with age, a great one-on-one and 1v1 pick, but also has not lost once on Nemesis for Ghost Gaming. They've picked it 10 times. They've won 10 times. This is the 11th game. So maybe there's some room for them to finally slip up. And honestly, after 10 times of winning with it, that's the time to slip up. But it just feels like the numbers are going to be playing against Sanguine in that regard for the rest of this one.
It's going to be difficult for them. I mean, I'm glad they're not putting too many eggs in the wrong U-basket because Nemesis could pose some problems for this Hercules if that is where all their lead ends up getting set. Sam and Panatom meet a little bit here in the jungle. Big grouping going to be happening as Sanguine bring 4 over. Ghost have 4 local as well if the need be. Looks like Sanguine are considering a blue buff invade. Rongu and Panatom step forward. Sam, Mike, and Fine OK all nearby. Captain Twig has gone back to mid, whereas Shinto hovers close. But Sanguine think a bit better of it. They just come grab the Totemoku. Now they grab the Totemoku and they leave.
Takes a little bit of extra time. But yeah, get in, get out, and find yourself a little bit of an advantage. Ku, it's really interesting. Totem of Ku is one of those things that at the end of the game, you're not thinking how many times did we get the totem. That's really what signified whether or not we were going to win. But for Ghost Gaming here, it's something that helps out all of the lanes, right? It gives everybody just a little bit of a benefit. And if they can pick it up a little more consistently over there, whether that shows Fine OK dominating Yarkor or what have you in the solo lane matchup, realistically, I think it helps slow down the Pele and the Hercules there, specifically for your mid laner there, and Twig helping him stabilize, stay succinctly alive without having to burn his ult and beads every single time someone shows face in his lane. And I think that opens up the avenue for some counter-aggression on the side of Ghost, because otherwise you might just see a knock-up into a push from Rongyu a little more often than you'd like to if you're a Ghost fan.
But this pressure has been working for Sanguine. They are pushing this lead out a little bit more, bit by bit, just under 2,000 in their favor this time. And Sam has been relatively quiet this game, hasn't had any lanes where he feels like they've got the pressure that could set up for a gank, doesn't like these opportunities. So it looks like Ghost are just as comfortable playing this one slow as Sanguine are, and Ghost might even have a better argument for it with Captain Twig on the Ola run, with Panda Cat on this Heimdall. Now Fine has been grabbed by Yarkor, but not really much kill potential there as Yarkor does have the pressure.
Yeah, this is something King Arthur I kind of expected to start to see around this point. You know, say you hit 9 minutes, 10 minutes, and he's level 10. Things start to shift in his favor. It's been surprisingly going all game. We haven't really gotten to see FineOK step up and utilize the early game aggression Mulan can bring. And it's so weird to see her, I guess, simultaneously not able to showcase her early game strength that she has, but also she's not getting a lot of opportunity to level up her abilities too much because she's getting bullied out of the lane. Looks like they might even lose their blue buff over here if you're FineOK. And so a lot of that Yarkor is able to apply this game that the Cthulhu just wasn't bringing in game 1.
Well, look at all the ults that just got used in mid. Panatom, Shinto, and Wrong User all on cooldown. I think Twig responded with the Sanctified Field. We saw that when we came over to the tail end. So Sanguine were looking for a big dive. It worked, at least insofar as it got Twig's beads out. Those are on cooldown as well, but Twig did survive. So Sanguine, kind of despite what I was thinking earlier, have been looking for opportunities to get aggressive, even manufacturing them by getting aggressive in mid. Just didn't quite pan out for him that time.
Now it's a question that I always ask with early game teams specifically. Ghost, I think, have proven themselves time and time again that they always answer it with something. But you're 10 minutes in, 2k gold up, almost 3k if you can get a couple hundred gold in your favor without losing anything. That tier 1 tower teetering on the edge of defeat over there in right lane, maybe being the answer to that. What do you do with it? You know, it's like you've been able to, you know, you're a dog chasing a car, you caught the car, what do you do now? Where are you going with this lead outside of just continuing to bully these lanes you've already been bullying, right? You've forced Twig to use his ult and to use his beads. Are you going to find a kill there? You know, you've almost got this tier 1 tower in right. Are you going to lock FineOK down? Are you going to get a Pyro, Gold Fury? Where are Sanguine going to go? Because the one thing Ghost has, I think, a little more consistently, because of the fact that they've just stylized themselves into this early game team, is that they recognize how early they can start to contest some of those map objectives, the big ones that really shift the dynamic of the game, where Sanguine, they love the late game. Like, they love fighting for Oni Furies. They love coming in for a Fire Giant 30 minutes in. They don't necessarily have the same prowess, I think, early on.
Oh, maybe a bit of a disconnect. Panatom missed the damage from the knockup and the knockup itself, but they should still be able to keep pressuring on to FineOK, but FineOK makes it out of there. Polar Bear Mike comes in just in time, and the driving strike gets nothing. So Sanguine looking for another gank, but feels like they're just a bit out of sync on that one. They don't get the kill, but perhaps they can find the blue buff invade. They still have all their ults. FineOK is already on cooldown. Panatom starts it up, blue buff successfully stripped away. But there's only 3 members at Ghost here, as FineOK had to back. Captain Twig's Sanctified Field is just used to amplify himself, since it's facing the other way, and doesn't end up getting a whole lot of value.
It felt like it was kind of two-pronged. I can amplify myself, but also escape route, right? Like, hey, what if things get dicey? I need to get out of here. I'm going to throw my ult this way so I can run away from Sanguine. And then almost immediately, it looks like they could have benefited if they had turned it around and then gotten aggressive into Sanguine.
Panatom do get aggressive. That's Captain Twig down. Boulder plus Shinto deletes Sam for sucker in mid as well. And this is all off that pressure in solo, off the ultimate from Twig being down. And the beads getting him no value in this situation either. I mean, this is Sanguine showing us what their early game pressure looks like, and Ghost not responding to it appropriately, not every time. Now this could be good. Wrong U has been rooted. Wrong U is crippled as well as Mike comes in with the dash, but Wrong U gets the heal, driving strike to reposition Mike, and now he's in some trouble. Gets the 2-man stun, but the damage still coming from long range. Mike just barely able to make it out of there A-OK and get back towards mid.
I think this has been not only a great showing from Wrong Yu, who had a very unfortunate game pretty much the entire duration last time. Ghost Gaming find 1 pick on the Wrong Yu, and then it just kind of snowballed into a continuous stream of kills. But now this Hercules setting up a lot more, causing trouble for Twig, I think more than anybody, who seems to be willing to drop that Sanctified Fields at even the hint of aggression from Sanguine, let alone them actually getting aggressive. And unfortunately, it leaves him in a bad spot. You know, use it either to amp himself or have an escape route over there in right lane, and then they just dive the tier 1 in mid because they don't care anymore. You don't have your ults, your beads can only save you so much, and now he's just a sitting duck.
Able to make it out of there, though, is Twig, but Sanguine have the grouping to go wherever they'd like, and it looks like they'd sure like to have the Gold Fury. Polar Bear Mike was right in the way, elects to no longer be in the way, and Sanguine start up the objective, and I just don't think Ghost could do much about this. They go to Pyromancer in trade, so Sanguine take gold, Ghost take Pyro to at least get something in response, but this lead is now getting to the point where it's out of control as Mike gets his dash interrupted by the stun from Yarkor. Rongyu not going to look for the pull, so Mike should be okay, but look at the experience deficit in the jungle. There's a 2-level lead there. Their lead in solo, a lead in the jungle. I think there's a larger lead in mid than it looks like when Shinto levels up. Things are starting to become a problem as Panatom has to get out of there. 2-man stun, though, from Yarkor on the top. Sanctified Field does catch 3 members, and Panatom is low as Fino-K gets 1. But Shinto, not to be trifled with, gets a kill in return. Sam, who closes the gap, cuts down the Thoth. Mike tries to come back in to help, but he's so low at this point that he might just be throwing himself away as Rongyu takes care of Fino-K easily.
And unfortunately, Panda Cat no able to get out the Bifrost, saving the day this time around. 2 for 2 at the end of the day. And you have to question, honestly, Twig had a phenomenal ult there. And I want to say, even though he goes down, it's worth, like, it feels weird to say that because he's 0 and 3. He's 2 levels down compared to Shinto sitting there at level 12. But I think he's just going to continue scaling well. Even though he's only level 12, he's now got that Telkine's ring online. Technically, I believe, helping out, or not helping out there, but being able to watch Rongyu go down means he doesn't have anything to worry about for another 30 seconds. So he's going to be able to coast here for some farm. And being able to eliminate Shinto, Panatom, now Rongyu, so making it a 3 for 2 extended engagement, even better for Ghost Gaming to make sure that the 2 driving forces so far of Sanguine have been shut down.
And that kill does put Panda Cat ahead of Nitroid as well, Ghost. So there's some good Gore, excuse me, does good value there for Ghost. Instead, as that's probably the only area on the map where they feel like they can win their one, where they've got someone on their side who's matching the value from Sanguine. And that's not the first time that we've seen Panda Cat provide some value for them. He has tried to move over to these fights and they're happening in the left, tried to get involved, but he hasn't had a chance to do much. Once he is able to start being in these fights a bit more, that's when Ghosts might look their best. Because Gore, they won, or at least kept that fight close, up near the tier 1 in the jungle, near those back harpies, and were able to use a good Sanctified Field to fight in. The damage was there from Sam, especially when they were able to shred the protections. They just need a couple more fights like that, and Ghost are absolutely right back in it.
Yeah, I have nothing but faith in Ghost's late game. Again, this composition I think just ages a little bit better than what Sanguine has. Because even though I think we're going to start seeing Shinto, Netroid, and Yarkor, when he's making these rotations over, begin to pop off, and their names should start showing up in the kill feed a little bit more often, I think Panatom and Rongyu are maybe going to start kind of tipping over into the, well, I guess just not as strong area, right? They're still ahead, and they still have that lead, but you don't get to see a lot. I mean, Panatom just had to ult to get away there.
He did. Panatom in some trouble. Mike right there with the root, but not able to lock him down, so Sanguine able to get their jungler out of a tough spot. Meanwhile, Yarkor is the one near the rest of Ghost Gaming, but he makes it out of there A-OK as well. So Sanguine going to take the full reset, and his gold lead staying right around the 3,000 mark. The experience deficit's still there in some areas, but fine, starting to close the gap here with Yarkor. They're both level 16. Panda Cat took the lead. You can see the experience and gold was slightly dipping back down. That's where Ghosts have started to look a bit more competitive in these fights, and where Sanguine have sort of hit a plateau in the ability to generate lead. So even though Ghosts are still behind, if they're still the same amount behind 7 minutes from now, it won't mean much at all.
I was going to say, they've been hovering this 3,000 mark for minutes now in terms of gold. You saw that one start to plateau, and like you said, with the experience going in their favor, it showcases that Ghosts are more than anything pulling things back in their favor ever so slightly. And even though I think gold is very important early on, the experience is definitely the big difference maker. It's just over a level between Shinto and Twig. That seems to be the biggest difference between anybody on the map. Maybe the supports, maybe the hunters having some of it, but just having Shinto that far ahead is giving them enough of an advantage that I expect to see more out of Thoth a little bit earlier. But that's just one fight away. That actually maybe makes Shinto an easier target, more of a target, I should say, for Ghost Gaming. Because if they lock him down, they could equalize things very easily. For Twig, they could get Mike more into the fight, because he's just now hitting 12, just now getting that second relic online. Either way, the way like you can look at it as a level deficit, or you can look at it as now that they have everything available to them for Ghost Gaming with that level 12 relic there for the support. they're able to come into the fight fully equipped, fully prepared, and there's a Oni Fury starting in about 10 seconds. It's something that Sanguine like to fight over, but I can't imagine Ghost is going to let him just have it.
This is a fight that I think Ghost can take. As you highlighted, Relic should be available for them. 2 Thorns on their side, 1 for Fine, 1 for Mike. But you mentioned it, someone's got to get back there and take care of Shinto. Whose job is that going to be? As Fine OK and Yarkor battle in mid, Ghost have 3 near their own red, and Sanguine have 4 on the actual objective itself. But they haven't started it up. Now they pull it. Got Nectroid putting damage into it, Ghost recognizing it, starting to walk in. But they reset the objective. Ghost don't overcommit. Sanguine have to drop it, and Ghost could be right here for the next time it gets pulled, which could be any time.
Well, with the bleeding forward, I mean, PM just goes in and gets a huge stun.
And it works! Wrong you gets deleted! Fine OK takes the kill credit as Mike barely makes it out of there alive. Fine OK is low too, but they can't chase through the sanctified field. Sam cuts down your core, and Sanguine are left scratching their heads. Mike finds a blink 3-man stun, and they absolutely pull the trigger on Wrong you. What a call from Ghost Gaming, and just like that, they're back within striking distance.
I mean, such an insane amount of control from an Artio. The bear form is maybe something that you can glance over, but I think so far that PBM has been doing a good showcase for what makes her strong. And now, not only is he in it, 4 assists that have come through, but I mean, those kills read 5-3 just a second ago. It also alleviates all pressure Sanguine could have had on this Oni Fury. There's no one on the blue squad coming this way, so that's a free objective for Ghost. And not only that, but so much pressure that's about to be found in the lanes because of those Oni minions.
I mean, this is huge, and how much better have Twig's ultimates been this game, though? The one we mentioned earlier up here, those back harpies on Ghost's solo side of the jungle. That one just now, that was a death sentence for Sanguine, because certainly Sanguine should have gotten 2 return kills, but they had no chase potential through the sanctified field, and now Sanguine are going to start up this Pyromancer. Looks like Ghosts are either unaware or unconcerned, as this will go down for free in Sanguine's favor. They had some vision on that side of Sentry Wards. They knew Ghost couldn't see it. And Sam Persecker comes in to see the damage, knows there's nothing to worry about, ends up putting down a ward of their own, it looks like, and recontrolling that fire pit vision.
Now you can see Sam is kind of fishing. He's out in the jungle. He's the lure right now. There's a Mulan and a Heimdall waiting. Once he finds someone, they're gone, and they're going out there. Although Pandacat with his ult could pretty much find the same effect. Either one of them, great initiations for the team to then collapse in on. Fine OK started smacking that Fire Giant. I think this is just to try and pull someone like Brong Yu into the fight.
Well, they just did the heat check. They know for sure they can kill this guy if they get the CC, but not as cleanly this time around. So Shinto plant in the back. They do eventually get the kill on the Wrong U. That's Sam that gets the kill credit, and Sanguine don't seem to have an answer, but a great stun comes through. Fine OK falls, and Netrioid is able to get 1 in return. So solo for support, but Panatom still stepping forward, looking for Pandacat, who has the beads. Ultimate disengage, and that leaves Mike on a bit of an island. Chasing him out is Panatom, but cannot catch up. Ghost at least making 1-for-1, but I think Sanguine are the better looking team on the back of it, and now they're going to start up FG.
Twig, though, has Sanctified Field. Sam's in the neighborhood. I think they still have enough to contest this if you're Ghost, but you don't have PBM, you don't have Fine OK, so you're going into it kind of blind.
And they just draw them in perfectly. What a play from Sanguine as they step up topside, collapse, and get the 2-for-1 in their favor. Yes, they do end up losing Panatom on the back end, but they can still come back towards fire and start it up. They don't have to worry about Sanctified Field this time, and no ultimates available for Sam or Mike, obviously, on the stance changer. But Sanguine dropped the objective for now. I don't know if they're ready to start it up.
The biggest highlight through all of this, because it's about to come back up, is that final judgment for Shinto. Reich, though, is in this area. I guess just got to keep my eyes on him because he has that potential to run in and take this. They're not stopping him and they're not killing him just yet. And that Fire Giant's getting lower and lower. If it takes about 10 more seconds, they could even steal it and get it onto the side of Twig.
Well, Sam comes to the back of the Fine and just gets deleted. He was trying to do the low side gank, but that didn't work. So Sanguine can stick the objective. But
Fine's
now
back.
this conveyor belt for Sanguine isn't working. Fire Giant low, and Sanguine barely get it. Shinto from downtown told them to stick it. I got the final judgment, and Sanguine confirmed the objective. Polar Bear Mike barely survives, but that leaves Fine OK right in the thick of everything. Mike wants to help, but there is no helping here. Fine OK pays his life, and Sanguine gets the objective.
I mean, it's weird when you have an engagement that starts with Fine OK dying and at this point ends with Fine OK dying. That's how long that one went on. They just kept it extended, kept baiting either side. But Sanguine come out far and ahead on that one. And my MVP through all of it has to be Shinto. Not only the final judgment to help confirm the Fire Giant, but roll it back to that previous fight. He hits a 3-man final judgment through the wall. I think immediately they're the ones who start losing that fight. Rong Yu, I believe, fell almost right after he finds the shot. But it leaves so much of Ghost too low to continue that aggression. That's when Sanguine really start to aggress forward, take over the Fire Giant pit, and Ghost are left in that decision. PBM backs, but they can't leave the Fire Giant pit alone. And unfortunately, now it just feels like they're in complete disarray. I mean, no one's over there with Twig. I don't know what he was hoping to accomplish. Maybe get a little bit of farm online, but he's 0-5 and 6, and I think Sanguine have just found his kryptonite.
It's ironic. I think the game where Twig has had the better Ola run game is the game where he looks much worse, 0-5 and 6. Now the left side, Phoenix, the one being burned. They already got the tier 2, obviously, at this point. On the left side, Phoenix can't hope to stand up to Sanguine's pressure. Ghost don't even get in a position to defend it. So now they're trying to reposition. It looks like Yarkor actually does get the teleport off in time to show up near Sam. They don't even want to give up the mid-tier 1 tower to Sam at this point. So Sam drops the ultimate, looks to the 1v1 up against Yarkor, and is actually winning it, but Yarkor has backup on the way. Panatom and Netroid all on their way to help out. Meanwhile, perhaps they have to trade out Wrong You to make it happen. Final Judgment hits 3 again. Shinto with the invade and punish deletes Panda Cat, and Wrong You manages to live through it all, as does Yarkor. So Sanguine again able to get the better of Ghost by spreading the map.
You stay alive of your Sanguine, you've killed off Twig, you just get the better of Panda Cat, you take a Phoenix, you're about to take 2 more tier 2s. This is feeling like Game 3 territory at this point, in my eyes, for Sanguine. They've done so well to turn around what we have seen out of them the last week and a half now that they've played. And this one has been very solid. There's still a little bit of room for error, though, and I'm looking at Sam to maybe be the playmaker, especially with these Ola run ults. There's a lot of openings for Ghost to fight back.
Saying on our right outside to the right side, Phoenix got good damage on Define and pushed him out. That should make this right side Phoenix free. It absolutely does. Sanguine take it. And Ghost Gaming now have only 1 middle Phoenix to defend, down 11,000 gold. And Sanguine in complete control at this point. And how great has Shinto been in this game for Sanguine, man? 5-1 in 6, top or near in the net worth chart, right behind Panatom, who's been farming well too. And just cleanly finding the damage that they needed. A pin-heavy build with the E-Staff on the end to cap it all off for him. And Ghost don't have anyone who I think can dive Shinto effectively. Fine, okay, can't get back there efficiently. Neither can Sam or Mike. And he's been coasting because of it the whole time.
It does feel a lot like, unfortunately, this Mulan maybe picked up to help control the King Arthur, maybe for the late game. Hadn't been able to do too much so far there for Fine OK. And like you said, Shinto has been far and above what you would want out of your mid laner, almost single-handedly controlling a lot of the reasons Sanguine are ahead at this point. And now pushing it even further with a Primal Fury. Between him and Panatom, their early game, that first blood they were able to get, I think maybe kind of showcasing the pace they wanted to set on this. And now, Finch, we're looking at 13,000 gold separating these teams. Unfortunately for PBM, it's not often you get to say this, he's 3 level down. Wrong U's 19, PBM's 16 still. So even though you're looking at that maybe not being as important, it's the support, right? At the end of the day, he's not going to be as tanky, a little easier to kill for Sanguine, and he's not going to have the same, amount when it comes down to his abilities, whether it's stun duration, damage, what have you. That's going to come through from leveling those up. I think this is something that's going to end up just really hurting Ghost, having PBM not in a real good driver's seat position for the squad. It's kind of leaving it up to Sam or Fine OK to be that starting initiator and factor for them. And that's just not usually how they play.
No, I mean, the Milan has not impressed throughout the entirety of this set for me, and that is going to hurt their engage, as you're talking about. Mike being behind is a problem, but certainly a result of just the whole team being behind and there being no farm for supports to go get in this kind of situation. So Sanguine start up fire, Ghosts are not going to contest, and instead we'll just try and defend. Left side Phoenix not far from coming up at this point. Even Sam is going to push out some of these fire waves, make it a little bit harder for Sanguine to be able to freely push it up, but this is going to be a very difficult base defense. They're so far behind, and they're not in a comp that plays particularly well from behind either, particularly on this Olaran, who they really need to do a lot of the heavy lifting with this ultimate, but he's just going to have the one, and it's going to have to be perfect, and how can it be with Sanguine having all these relics and cooldowns and such a lead?
It's a lot of pressure, like you said, on the Twig to make this work, because when I look over there, I mean, Nemesis can help kill someone faster, Fine OK can slow them down, but it really is Twig that is the turnaround potential for this team, and they're going to have to be careful with Rongyu getting a pluck like that.
Well, Fine OK in trouble right away. Final Judgment doesn't land on him. I think it went for Panda Cat instead, who is low. Yarkor ultimate forces out Beads as Panatom gets the kill onto Fine. Sanctified Field does lock down Yarkor for a moment, but great control from Rongyu. Are you kidding me? As he keeps 2 into the air. That sets up Panatom for the triple kill, and Ghost Gaming gonna have to go back to the drawing board. No way they can close this one out from this point as Sanguine start to barrel forward to end game 2 and force a game 3. Sam comes in from behind to help, but the Titans starting to buckle down below half, down below a quarter. Panatom adds on a 4th as Sanguine win game number 2.
F in chat for Sam for Soccer's win rate there on Nemesis. 100% win rate for Ghost with Nemesis on their side here in Phase 2. It's gone. It's out the window. And unfortunately, they're going to have to, like you said, go back to the drawing board. Best way to describe that one. There's a lot of things go wrong. I think the early aggression kind of caught Ghost Gaming off guard. I don't know if they expected it. And there's a certain point, I think we highlighted it a few times throughout there, that we're seeing Twig get these great ults, but they're not really converting into too much. One of them helps them turn a huge fight around, and we see that kind of plateau the gold lead that Sanguine had. But then none of the others really had the follow-up. It didn't lead to 2-3 kills like you would want it to, and at the end of the day, he just wasn't able to make that Olaran work, I think, quite as well as you would like it if you were a Ghost fan.
Well, Agro said this might be the bounce back, and it absolutely was. Game number 3 coming up right after this.
Ghost Gaming was hoping Captain Twig looked a little bit more like the Olaran we just saw in that bumper right there. Unfortunately, that was not the case, as Sanguine ends up taking game number 2 and ruining Sam for Soccer's perfect 10-0 run on the Nemesis. F's in the chat for that one. Miff, last game was jungle diff. This game also jungle diff, no matter what happens, because again, as I've already covered, all games are jungle diff at their core. But also, I thought that this Arthur pick for Yarkor was really, really impactful. Don't know if you could really say the same for Final K's Mulan.
Yeah, that Mulan was definitely struggling in lane as well as inside of the team fight. I'm surprised I'm going to be the one to say it, Aggro, because I know you were probably working your way towards it, but this game might have just been a little bit of mid-diff, man. Shinto looks real good on that Thoth. Huge ultimates to separate these team fights. The first team fight of the game that really separated these two teams around the Fire Giant is off the tail of a 3-man ult from Shinto. And then from there, he was allowed to free cast the entire time just because this tanky front line from Sanguine keeping them at bay. Shinto looks real good on this Thoth pick.
He looks fantastic and really shouldn't be a whole lot of surprise. I guess as of late, I opened Game 1 picks and bans saying that Shinto has not been as consistent as normal, but in this game he certainly was. That was a massive ult for him, though ultimately doesn't get them as much as they would have liked. It'll get him the quick little kill onto Panda Cat, but felt like with the 3-man ult, maybe they could have gotten a little bit more. Just felt like this was a much more cohesive Sanguine performance. Rongyu looked fantastic on the Hercules. That 2-1 combo was backbreaking. It set up Panatom for the triple. Panatom definitely much better on this Pele than he was on that Nem. This is the Sanguine that was first seed in phase number 1. This is what they looked like consistently. They looked great in game 2.
They did, and they still brought that new age style of Sanguine when they played around that early game. Panatom was getting involved very early on, exploiting the fact that Pele has a much better early game than Nemesis, immediately looking for that 2v2 in mid, finding themselves first blood and then a red buff invade on the tail end of it. I think that Sanguine has got themselves a pretty cohesive draft here. They took away a lot of the strong tools that Ghost used in game 1. All around, smart picks, smart play. I think Ghost's going to have to change up some things. They can't allow Shinto to free cast like he did. 27, nearly 28,000 damage. That's ridiculous.
Crazy numbers there. And Yarkor with 26k as well, not to be ignored on that Arthur. On the other side, you look at Twig. He had like 11 more damage than Mike in the game. That says a lot about how much damage Mike was doing, but also how difficult it was for this Ola run to get his damage off in some of these team fights. This frontline combination of Hercules and Arthur now undefeated through the first 2 games of this set. Ghost utilized it in game number 1. Now Sanguine abuses it in game number 2. Seems like frontline has really been a key part of this set so far. It always is, but in particular, I think these 4 players, Final K, PBM, Yarkor, Rongyu, have really been under the microscope so far. We'll see if that duo continues to be Hercules and Arthur in picks and bans here in game number 3.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Ghost shift up their first phase of bans just a little bit here back in Game 2. They decided to dedicate 2 of their bans to Ram and Cupid. Seeing as the Hunters really haven't been the determining factor in this set so far, I would not be surprised to see maybe a King Arthur ban coming through here or something along those lines to mitigate the strengths of not only their own team, but the other one. Try and make sure that they can find something that fits their own playstyle as well. Ghost Gaming is going to be in that first pick slot. Banning out the Sobek first up overall. Seems like they're just testing the waters. Not a pun that I intended, but Emoji coming through from Sanguine kind of pans it out that way.
Not bad. I've got some respect for that pun. Though it is interesting to me that Ghost banned Sobek top 3 game 1. It is not picked or banned game 2. And now they go to first banning it again in game number 3. Now things certainly change going from second pick to first pick, but maybe Ghost thinks Sanguine is valuing the Sobek a little bit more highly than they are in reality. He won't get a chance to prove it this game, though, as it has been taken away. Sanguine changing up their bans a little bit as expected because of the switch up in priority. Yamoja and Ymir, again, Sanguine putting a lot of respect on Mike's God Pool here with their first 2 bans.
And can you blame them, man? I mean, I already went on my spiel on how
No.
sick PBM is earlier with that Ymir play, but as well as the emoji, I think targeting this guy out makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go ahead and just take away the Hercules immediately here as well, but that's going to leave so much on the table. Instead, it is going to be the Hebo trying to target out Twig and mid, but we're leaving gods like Persephone available, Hercules, Nemesis makes her way through as well. There's a lot here that both teams are going to need to address, as well as the Cupid. If Ghosts go ahead and decide to take their mid laner here, it would likely open up Sanguine to taking the best hunter left available. So if Ghost does decide to go ahead and take Cupid, makes sense to me.
Freya also available. That's been banned every game. Decides not to go that way. It is Cupid first overall, and Pandacat has looked very, very strong on this god. You think about his last few performances. His game against SSG was fantastic on this pick. I think Pandacat definitely looks like one of, if not the best Cupid players in the SPL right now, so it makes sense to take it top number overall. That leaves open a lot, including this King Arthur that all of a sudden is getting a little bit of a resurgence. Now, it's not a surprise between FineOK and Yarkor. These were two of the premier Arthur players back in his heyday, but not a lot of other players are picking this selection. Even some of the other great Arthur players, Mika, Scary D, not really going to this pick nearly as much. A little bit telling to me that these two teams have gotten to a point where it's worth Sanguine top 2ing this pick, and for the record, I think they're right. These two have been what have dominated the last 2 games.
Yeah, 100% win rate on these 2 picks in the last 2 games, but that does leave Persephone available, who is arguably one of the best gods in the game right now. We've seen Twig play it a couple times in the past. He has struggled with landing the ultimate a couple of times. Positioning seems to be an issue, but I know for a fact that he's been constantly working on this pick. But then he locks in the Poseidon, which is going to be a little bit susceptible to damage and dive. It doesn't have nearly as much survivability as a Persephone would with the self-peel with the giant root ultimate, as well as the fact that a secondary life, if she goes down, she can come back and still try and return some damage. This isn't United, so this is very likely not going to be a Poseidon jungle. I think Twig is showing his hand a little bit early here on this pick.
This is a pick that has been banned by Sanguine, at least in the last game. So if they're worried about it getting banned or they want to add in another cripple, it does make sense to go to this pick, as Cthulhu is the pick here, most likely for FineOK. A little surprised, Miff. I mean, Ghost was the first team, I think, to really give the game plan on how to really abuse this pick in the solo lane. It hasn't been winning a whole lot recently, but Ghost still willing to top 3 it with gods like Amaterasu open, by the way, who has not been picked or banned all set, which is almost illegal. I don't know if we have a competitive ruling on it, but we might, just based on how good Ama is. I'm shocked to see the Cthulhu here, frankly, for FineOK.
I am as well, especially considering that Cthulhu has largely struggled in the SPL as a whole, not just for Ghost, not just for Sanguine, but every single team has been struggling to find wins on this god ever since it's been really figured out how to play around it. I'm surprised to see Sanguine with that 3rd pick available to them and Nemesis still being available, one of the best counter picks into Cthulhu. Instead, they pick up the Jing Wei, maybe worried about Netroid finding something that he's comfortable on. Ghost Gaming could very likely just go ahead and ban out the Nemesis now. Sure, Panatom hasn't had his absolute best performances on that pick, but it's just such a clean counter matchup. Cthulhu does Descent into Madness, immediately Nemesis ultimate. Okay, a lot of the strength of your ultimate on the Cthulhu is immediately mitigated. But instead, so far, the bans are going to be Cerberus by Sanguine and then a Morrigan by Ghost. We might have Nemesis fall through here.
Very well could. As Sanguine decide not to ban it, they decide to go with the Thor ban. Ghost has the option to also ban away this Thoth that Shinto just played, or Persephone, which is still open, for the record. Not picked or banned quite yet. Almost feel like there's too many mages to worry about banning. I think I might ban Pele if I'm in Ghost's shoes. Just try and keep Panatom off of the one pick that I think he's looked transformative on. Everything else has been a little bit lackluster as of late. They decided to go with that Thoth ban, understandably so. Shinto was lights out in game number 2. But if I'm Sanguine, I'm kind of stoked that Panatom has an option at least to go back to Pele.
Could go back to Pele, but again, I think that this Nemesis counter matchup is not something that I should undervalue. But why would I ever doubt aggro? I shouldn't do it. Pele does get locked in. I think Ghost is right to ban out the Thoth. Shinto was the diff. He was the diff maker in game 2. He did all the damage. He separated these team fights. I think you immediately have to address that, even if it does allow Panatom to fall down to something that he's a little bit more comfortable on. But I'm not going to let go of it. I still think it should have been a Nemesis just because of what we're looking at here. I mean, we know another tank's going to come through. Kuzenbo is going to be picked for Ghost. Nemesis is good into that. It's good into Cthulhu. It's good into Cupid because he's only got the dash to escape. I think it would have been a very strong pick.
But with Panatom, his performance in Game 1, Nemesis was pretty good there too. Didn't do that much. I think I'd rather take the Pele performance basically every time. As Hunbats and Kuzenbo round out the draft for Ghost, Kuzenbo's been top pick in some sets. Mike gets it 9th for his or 8th, I suppose, for his team. Got to be feeling pretty good about that. And then Hunbats has really risen as of late as well for Sam for Soccer as Shinto goes to the signature Merlin to finish off Sanguine's draft. It's been 2 pretty convincing wins, Ghosts more so than Sanguine's, but nonetheless, Sanguine still wins sub 30. Who do you think takes home the set here, Miff, based on the drafts?
Based on the draft and the play on field today, I think that Ghosts have got themselves a lot of tools here that can absolutely work out. I think it comes down to how is the early game going to pan out. If we see Panatom immediately walk into mid and find first blood for himself, he's going to have a lot of utility. The movement speed in Pele's kit to maneuver around the map and continually force that lead even further on. But if we see both teams kind of stagnate until level 5, or if Ghost pulls a lead, I think that's really where they're going to shine. This Hunbot is going to be a huge detriment.
Sam for Soccer looking to make the jungle diff happen in game number 3. One team's winning right here. Finch and Gore, let's find out.
Thanks, Aggro and Myth. Man, that Aggro guy's kind of underrated, huh? This should be a huge last game, though, between Ghost and Sanguine. 2 top 4 teams battling it out as they should be. But something that gives me some pause here, Gore, as they said on the desk, this King Arthur and Hercules, they've been on the winning team every time so far. Panatom looks so much better on the Pele. Shinto loves this Merlin. Netroid is on Jing Wei. It feels like all the ingredients for a Sanguine win are there.
I'm going to feed into your fear a little bit more, Finch. Sanguine already having all of that, and then Poseidon's 1-6 in Phase 2. He is not winning a lot altogether when it comes down to the year, but, I mean, he's been an odd pick just through and through. Sometimes in the jungle when you're, Scream, and then sometimes here in mid. We haven't gotten to see him a whole lot overall. When he is picked up, he is not winning his game, so maybe facilitating a little bit of worry here for Ghost Gaming as well. But like you said, Panatom just had a great game. Shinto is the Merlin. We might as well go ahead and replace Merlin's name with Shinto for how much he has been just so impactful on this god. Netroid, wrong you, right back to where they know they're going to find control, and Yarkor where he's found success last game. Unless PBM can keep up that pressure, I don't know if it's going to go well.
Well, some trouble for Wrong You over in left. The Cat and Mike working together and able to find that first blood. Ghost on the board first, and maybe even another one. Netroid has to use speed. It's good knock-up, but the Heart Bomb stun is there. Mike steps into the tower and could end up paying for it. Just barely lives, as does Netroid. But Ghost, get first blood, get the relics out from Netroid, and they're already off to a great start.
I'm sorry I doubted you based Kuzenbo. We will never do it again. It is always going to come true. This is one of those gods that it realistically is not someone that you're going to see pick up a lot in casuals. You're not going to see him win a lot elsewhere. It's just in the right hands with the right players. Kuzenbo is nuts, and PBM is one of those players that is always going to make him look good. He's got a good push for displacement with good turn radius, so almost guaranteed grabs onto Rongyu and Netroid. And now that Netroid doesn't have beads, they've already shown they can burn down the Hercules like it's nothing. This Jing Wei should be worried, and I won't be surprised if Sanguine, after that first blood, have to actually play it safe and slow in the duo lane, even though this Hercules wants more.
Great response from Mike. Wrong-You gets hit by the Heart Bomb and makes sure Mike stays close. There is a gank coming. Panatom loops underneath. Good dash from Panda Cat. Allows him to reposition. They got the knock-up. In comes Netroid, and Panda Cat can't juke enough. Good response from Sanguine as Panatom came in, but Sam for Soccer lumbering his way in late. Twig rotating across the top. Ghost could be able to find some kind of return. He finds the Whirlpool. That slows down Netroid, but not really much coming there. Sanguine with a great response off that gank from Panatom.
And it looked like it could have been so much. A good push from PBM, a good gank from Twig. Sanguine just find themselves in a good spot. Now PBM, kind of the opposite. That's the second time he's gone under that tower. and the second time he's walked out with his life.
And Sam stripped away the purple. Now Mike is in some trouble. Rotation in from Shinto, and Mike is certainly
good.
dead here. She gets the kill credit for it. And that's just Sanguine playing aggressive around this Hercules, that pull push into the tier 1 tower, chasing him down to make sure they get the kill. The Ghosts have come out aggressive, so have Sanguine.
I think what we're seeing out of Sanguine is just the only way to retaliate to a first blood like that, right? Full-on gank to the duo, slaughter anyone that stands in your way, ideally Panda Cat, but also PBM, just to make sure he's punished for that aggression. It makes you a little more timid. Most of these players assure themselves they're not actually going to end up being too scared to go in. There's never a world where that's going to happen. But now PBM knows that he can't just do it for free. There's always a little bit of counterplay. And so instead, I like what he was doing, which was kind of countering it. If Wrong Yu got a pluck onto Panda Cat, push him away to make sure that things slowed down. If you watch Panatom go in and get a knock-up, you find a good push.
I'm sorry, Gore, you're making a good point, but is that the picture of Jithans that we have? Okay, it's not worth stopping the whole broadcast to wonder if that's the only we have of this man, but that's who's doing our spectator today. As he brought that in there for us. Should be bringing us some good views, and maybe Netroid wish he could see something else as Polar Bear Mike rotates in on the top side, able to reposition, but the Nene is there. Beads gets him away from the stun, but Mike brings him back in. Panda Cat just has to hit some of these autos, and I think they dropped that one there, Gore. That should have been a kill, and in comes Wrong Yu to show you how it's done. Tower shut connects, and Panda Cat has to use the beads to get away.
I'd have to go back and watch in slow motion. I only said his name twice, but I think it was 3, maybe 4 shots that didn't connect on the Netroid there. And on a one-shot target, you can't afford to do that. I think that's just one of those moments where he was playing the prediction game. He's like, okay, you're going to go here. You didn't do it that time, but you're going to go here. And every time shooting the one step to the right that Netroid theoretically should have juked into, but Netroid just didn't do it. And unfortunately, that prediction didn't work out for him. And then by the time he corrected, it was a little too late. Unfortunate for Ghost and Panda Cat as a whole, because Netroid doesn't really suffer too much from getting poked out of lane. Jing Wei is one of the few hunters that doesn't care if she gets the TKO, because she gets right back into the game almost immediately.
Sam rotating over, drops the Fear No Evil, but Netroid was ready even without the beads. Airstrike allows him to make it out of there. Wrong Yu perfectly safe as well. And this is now Sam showing up twice over here on the left and not finding much from it. Good news for Ghost, though, is that he is still even with Panatom, maybe a little bit ahead. I think he hit 6 ahead of Panatom, but either way, despite the fact that he's made a couple of rotations over here to the left without finding much, he's still been looking A-okay. And Gore, Sanguine have been responding to Ghost at their strongest part of the game. Even looking better. This Hercules has looked great, been hitting all his pulls, been able to find the push on the back side of it as well. Panatom even coming to strip away a little bit of farm. This is a different kind of Sanguine that are okay to scrap in the early. Now, it's worth noting, Ghosts are still ahead in farm, but Sanguine competing at a point in the game when I used to think they were just chilling till later.
Yeah, this is something new from Sanguine more than anything, like you said. And honestly, you can notice where a lot of this pressure is coming from. It's all been on the dual lane. I mean, this is where the fights have been happening. Panatom's been over here, Sam's been over here. The solo mid lane fights, who cares about them? Right now, you're looking at Finoke and Yarkor smacking each other for 15 minutes before anything happens on that side of the map. And Shinto's just not going to be easy to lock down. Twig has been making too many rotations, and that's the power, I think, that Poseidon can bring that some of the other mid laners just can't. The rotation power Poseidon has, because of his move speed and his ability to kind of augment it to go in even faster, to zoom across the map, it kind of enables Twig to be in some of these fights that maybe Shinto won't be able to rotate to quite as quickly. But it also makes it more difficult, I think, for Panatom specifically to lock him down.
Yeah, Twig tried to rotate over for that first gank that we saw happen, dropped the Whirlpool, but wasn't enough to turn it around. So he's using that rotational ability, that extra movement speed you're highlighting, to move around this map quickly. And remember, this mid pick for Twig, I think, does deserve some more discussion, Core, because Sanguine have been banning the Anubis this set and the Poseidon away, and Twig has been falling down to some other picks to that Ola run in mid. And we're about to see, I think, if this Poseidon was worth getting banned away, if Twig can pilot it to a level where Sanguine are right to be wary of it. Because I don't know, man. I mean, Persephone was out there. We know Twig hasn't played on it, but that's a strong pick. I'd be banning Ola Run before I'm banning Poseidon, but clearly Sanguine know what they should be afraid of when it comes to Twig.
Well, right now, I'm still waiting for it, right? That shoot a drop that comes down from Twig when we see this one Kraken that absolutely demolishes something that Sanguine set up and then turns the page in favor of Ghost Gaming. The big comeback for him. But like you said, Farm is in favor of Ghost. Twig right now hasn't really been found in a position to utilize the strengths that Poseidon's going to be able to bring. And so even though they're down in kills, Ghost Gaming are kind of, it feels like they're stealing Sanguine's playbook, and Sanguine kind of doing vice versa, stealing what Ghosts are typically good at, the fighting early on. Whereas the farm so far has been in favor of Ghost. And this is something they've done as a team kind of all phase, all year really, which is just out-farm their opponents, even whether it means they're going to get first, if it means they're going to be second in the standings. They just farm better than most of the other teams, and early on, that's where their strengths are. It typically leads to a level lead, either in the hunters and mid and jungle, wherever. But right now, Sanguine doing a decent job of keeping up, at least in terms of levels. That gold difference is maybe going to start playing a little bit of a bigger role, but you take 2,000 separated among 5 players, it's still not going to be quite make a huge difference.
No, it really has not really caused that many problems so far. That 1,000 experience, 1,500 gold. This one's still very, very close. And despite those fireworks we saw at the beginning of the game, Gore, this has been a relatively slow-paced game since. These two teams perhaps recognizing what's on the line. Sanguine looking to bounce back out of a slump that has plagued them. Meanwhile, Ghost has kind of gotten back on track, but now that they've bested Space Station every time they face each other, they probably feel as though they deserve that #1 spot, so they want to get every win they can and claw their way back up there where we know that they can be. So there's a lot for both of these teams to be trying to fight for. Remember, Sanguine has some important games coming up later this same weekend, too, so they'd love some momentum. I, for one, think it's going to be tough for them to win later on if they get, clonked here as well. So a big one for Sanguine is Ghost looking for the invade. They step up, have enough damage, and strip away the red.
It's actually one of the conversations we've been having a lot of, looking specifically towards the later game, or the later in the week, right? It's been Knights and Sanguine that are at the top of the conversation. Sanguine really need this win.
Oh, again, they gotta hope they don't need to wrong you, because my man got deleted. Panatom ends up catching the hands from Polar Bear Mike, drops down, spins, got to the guns flying, and that's all they said for Panatom. A nice little 2 for 0 there in mid on the back of those huge teamfight ultimates. And I think this is what Ghost is going to have to do a lot of. They've got the control, and Sanguine have the damage, so fight around these big team fighting ultimates.
I mean, that is maybe the strength you're always going to see. You don't typically expect 3 ults to have to get dropped there in one lane, but I guess it does pick up 2 kills. But the Fear No Evil, Kraken, and Kuzenbo going into the spin, all maybe a little bit overkill there, but showcasing more than ever that Ghost Gaming have a really solid team fight, as you pointed out. That makes me worry for the late game still, because you're in a Fire Giant pit. Any one of those 3 ults is going to be enough for either displacement or to straight up find kills. It's good to get Twig on a roll. He's already got that Doom Orb online, so his damage is going to start ticking and feeling just a little bit worse off than I think what we're going to feel out of Shinto for this early game portion, or mid game portion, as we hit the 12-minute mark soon. And he's only going to get better with age.
Wasn't it 1,000, 1,000 like a moment ago? I remember doing that breakdown where I'm looking at the XP charts, and now it goes seem to be something closer to 3,000 out in control. This is quickly becoming a problem now for Sanguine. Yeah, look what happened here. 3,200 experience, 2,700 gold. It is starting to become a problem here for Ghosts. Now, the good news is for Sanguine, they had a similar-ish lead in Game 1, and Ghost really hung on and were still causing them problems. Perhaps Sanguine can do the same thing. It's still early days, but if Ghosts are able to keep up this pressure just with buff invades, just by farming the map better, then that's trouble for Sanguine, as in they come, bloop up defended by Ghost. Panatom and York are both here, but look at the rotation. On the way is Twig with the Whirlpool. On the way is Mike. Kraken and Whirlpool, all of it by Yarkor. He won't be taking a dip today, but he is still in between 4 members, able to retreat. And Twig maybe not finding as much there as he needed to.
3 ults used for no real gain on the side of Ghost Gaming. I was watching Sam, because that Fear No Evil was coming up just in time for the fight, but he wasn't able to get in there. And I think it is maybe a little more along the lines of what you said. You see the Whirlpool, you see the Kraken, and you see nothing big coming out from them. Maybe you don't drop the Fear No Evil in that fight. You just hold on to that one, take the L, and wait for the next one.
They defended their blue, which I guess was all they wanted, as Mike now in some trouble. Pulled back in by Wrong You Boulder there too. But Fear No Evil into Panatom kept him out of this little engagement. Is able to make it back towards his friends though. Should be able to hunt down Mike. Nice cleave auto off the back of that Volcanic Lightning. I think a minion was there to proc it for him. And that will be the end of PBM.
I mean, being able to find one kill, you pick that up. Panda Cat, though, shows no fear. Starting up a Gold Fury like it's nothing. You leave one hunter out of the fight, he knows what he wants.
Yeah, y'all can't just rotate 3 people over to right for free. Not with Panda Cat on the map. With Panda Cat with the heads-up awareness. Got a little bit of backup coming in from the rest of the squad there, Core. But this is what Ghost needed to do. Yeah, they might have lost Mike up there and couldn't quite get the kill on the Panatom with that Fear No Evil ultimate. But it was enough for them to be able to open up this Gold Fury and extend this lead out a bit more. And this is a bad scenario if you're Sanguine, where you're actually showing that you can win some fights and Ghost are still increasing the lead anyway.
I mean, being able to control objectives, I think that's the strength of it. We saw a ton of fights over here on the duo lane side, and none of them led to a Gold Fury. Finally, Sanguine starts showing up a little bit stronger on the right hand of the map, and Panda Cat just goes, oh, okay, I'll take whatever's over here for me. Whether it's farm, you know, in Netroid's case, usually it's a tower or two that he tries to push when, like, Fire Giant's being taken on the other side of the map. Here, Gold Fury being picked up, like you said, Ghost Gaming continue escalating this lead to almost a ridiculous amount that they're able to stay ahead. Because that last fight, last 2 engagements really from them, just did not hit the mark. I mean, so much of it is falling apart. You don't get the Kraken connecting, the Fear No Evil doesn't get enough lockdown on Panatom to get the kill. It just feels like things are going unfortunately poor for Ghost Gaming and the Teamfight Squadron. But if you're able to win the objectives, at the end of the day, that's the way to get yourselves a bigger lead.
Certainly is. Comfortable start to this game for Ghost. Despite how things looked, it was 2-1 for Sanguine with just the duo lane fight, but Ghost rotating to mid, decide they want a 2-for-0, get it. And then, even with losing pressure in solo, they head over to left and steal the gold. That's the red buff invaded. Mike elects to take it. Perhaps he's the only one safe enough to stick around, but that is the red buff around a Kuzenbo who's ready to party. Shinto has already used the flicker, so Fine OK says, yeah, you're free food. That means Mike gets to gobble him up. Red buff well used, and Tier 1 tower will be claimed. Now Fine OK slowly running away on Cthulhu. How often do you see Cthulhu in the ult running for dear life? Well, it works. He regroups back to Ghost. The Tier 1 tower goes down, and another little clean sequence there for Ghost.
Yeah, I love what Fine OK does, because he goes big, and 3 people are chasing him down. Like you said, Cthulhu's not going to run often, but 3 people's enough to make you get out of there. But now they're locking down Wrong You.
I'm sorry, Gore, I want your analysis, but apparently Ghosts don't. They drop the Kraken, delete Wrong You, and they take the Pyromancer, so Ghost find another good little sequence.
And you know what? I'm going to give Twig more credit than ever. That one Kraken earlier, you could remember it. Yarkor avoided it like it was the plague, I guess. But right there, you managed to hit Wrong You and a Pyromancer. You don't often get the two that you want right there with one Kraken. So good on him, and just good play from Ghost. Cthulhu doing a distraction so his team can get the Tier 1. Then once again, Fear No Evil just locked down from Sam to make sure that they're able to confirm that Pyromancer. At any given time, if you look at the left-hand side of the map, or the left-hand side of the screen, I guess, really, for Ghost Gaming, if 3 of those 5 diamonds are fully blue, they're ready for a team fight, right? They've got so much team potential. If Fine OK has his ult, that's going to be an easy distraction factor or aggression factor. Fields of Love, great at opening up the door. Same thing for the Kraken. Same thing for that Fear No Evil. And PBM has countless times been at least disrupting the backline by going back there and spinning around, let alone being able to find a good push right afterward to just displace someone in Sanguine. And it's just a very difficult composition to fight into.
Another successful red buff invade goes the way of Ghost. Pulliver Mike, level 13, keeping up with the junglers at this point, way ahead of Wrong You on this aggressive warrior who needs to be controlling the early game. It's been the exact opposite from him. And it's one thing to talk about how Hercules' value in the late game has increased lately. He doesn't fall off, but it's different when you're this far behind. Going to be really tough for Wrong You to be a relevant contributor for them. when he's this far behind. Now look at how pushed up Ghost are. They've got Polar Mike and Panda Cat in duo, threatening the tier 2. Sam lurking over the walls. The boulder has to come up from Wrong U just to get rid of the minion wave, so Panda Cat and Ghost don't just take this tier 2. I actually think that was the most heads-up way Wrong U can use that ult.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's just trying to slow down what it feels like. You know, apply some sort of cauterization to the wounds that Sanguine have been inflicted. But it looks like this tier 2 is not going to be able to withstand that onslaught. And this is just that awkward moment. I mean, Panatom's way over and right. Yarkor has now rotated over here to try and fight. I think this is to get some farm for the jungler. But it's also split Sanguine up so much that they can't really take the fight to Ghost Gaming here. With only 3 towers left standing on their side. One of them's a tier 1, which the closer you get to 20 minutes, the more negligible that tier 1 actually is. It exists on the map. It will be giving the Titan health, so as long as it's up in that regard, it matters. But it was over there with 1 wave for just a second. It's gone. So I think this is just opening Ghost Gaming for more control, more gold, and that's where that difference is coming to. You keep checking in on those graphs. 18 minutes in, I mean, look at the gold difference. It's 7,000 now in favor of Ghost Gaming, and that's a frightening lead to have. 7,000 gold, 7,400, almost 7,500 experience. You've got a massive lead in pretty much every regard you need to.
Fine, okay. You hate this old joke, but is he fine? Let's find out. Has been locked down. Big Fear No Evil, though, from Sam on the back. Not enough to save his solo laner, and now Sam is the one in trouble. Wrong U trying to catch up to him, but Twig is taking care of Panatom. Netrioid cleans up that kill into the low HP Sam. Nene doesn't quite catch up to Shinto. Now it does, so perhaps they can close that gap. But Sanguine somehow managed to find themselves a 2-for-1 by picking off one more member. But now Yarkor caught in the field of love. Panda Cat might be able to net them a return kill. They end up getting the enemy solo, so it ends up being solo jungle for solo jungle, and Ghost managed to even it out.
Not only that, but it's a really weird day where you're losing the fight as Ghost Gaming. Sam almost single-handedly turns it around. Unfortunately, didn't have enough damage just on his own. If Twig had been right behind him when that Fear No Evil hits and that Kraken comes through, that's a massive fight for Ghost. Otherwise, it comes out neutral in my eyes there. They do invest a lot, but because they get Yarkor killed off so much later, he's staggered out from the rest of Sanguine. It gives Ghost plenty of time to control the jungle, strip away buffs, pick up their own, grab that tier 1 over there and right, just for icing on top of the cake, and they don't really lose a whole lot. In fact, I think they're further ahead now than they were a second ago, even though that fight didn't seem like it should have gone their way.
No, I mean, it's crazy how well they're able to play. And look at this build here from Twig on top of it all. The Doom Orb and the Karen's Coin for all this extra movement speed. You got the pen from the Karen's Coin as well, the percent pen. The Pythags is there to sort of add a little bit of extra damage on there for the homies alongside the lifesteal. I like this build here from Twig. It's certainly working for them. Now they'll add the Pyromancer on to the list of accolades. Twig in the back, though, which makes you think they're not considering this fire, at least not yet. They don't want all 5 members to be there, so Sang would have time to regroup and show up if they do want to look for a defense. But, hey, this shows what I know. Who needs a Poseidon for your Fire Giants? They'll just start it up with Sam and fine okay anyway. Polar Mike coming across the top to look for a little bit of peel. I wonder if this is just to force it in, but look at this Twig! Not just not here for the Fire Giant, but he's in trouble. Took some damage as showed up over there, did Panatom and the boys. Now they'll lock down Yarkor here near the Fire Giant instead. Panda Cat gets that kill, and I guess they'll have Twig trying to defend that left tier 1.
I mean, it's the best way to counter it. As weird as it is, this is a strategy, again, Sanguine love to do. If you're going to lose the Fire Giant fight, win somewhere else, but if you can't win because Poseidon's going to clear better than you can't do much. Panatom can't even engage in there because the Kraken's going to be so strong as a counter and kind of a deterrent for Sanguine. What are you going to do? Try to dive a Poseidon? I don't think you're going to dive a 2-0-4 Poseidon and be happy about it. So he saves those tier 1s and tier 2 tower over and left. They get a ton of kills over here in the Fire Giant pit. Plus, I mean, technically leave themselves in position to get Fire Giant, although they haven't started it. Maybe they just want to fight Sanguine even more, so they're leaving it as bait on the map.
Like, what a weird little sequence, but one that I think works really well. Rongyu comes in late, gets gobbled up by Sam's excellent Fear No Evil, even with a good pull driving strike combo, while Twig defends the left tier 1. He must have been in a fight because the shell was on cooldown for him too, so he bites off 2 members, and now he is here for the Fire Giant. Mike is on the aggressive zone. They bring the objective down to half HP. Yarkor is on the way, as is Shinto, but just no chance. Go secure the objective. They don't have the Kraken for this next little fight, but they might not need it, as they're all able to blink in. Fear No Evil does get the relics out from Shinto. Yarkor gets separated, and this Merlin has nowhere to run. Mike keeps him locked down. Fine OK provides the damage, and that's one more pick for Ghost.
Well, Yarkor, I think at the end of the day, can run away from this as long as he wants, although running into minions might end up helping Sam, who has a level up on the solo laner. How often do you get to see that when the jungler has a lead overall? Yarkor finally ticks over to 18. But let's be honest, this is just buying time, and Yarkor's so separated from the team, they're in a 3v4 over there on that Phoenix, which maybe isn't going perfectly for Ghost, but it's opening up the conversation to continue a 3v4. Now there's a minute without Yarkor.
Minute without Yarkor, but Sam had to back. Mike is all the way over in left, and yeah, this has become unrealistic for Ghost's 3v3 on that top right. So they fall back, have plenty of time to regroup, spend up all this gold. They have gotten their pockets as well. Maybe they're not going to take the reset. They're waiting outside this tier 2 in mid, at least Panda, Fine, and Twig are. They'll burn this one down for free. Sam is positioned perfectly there for the Fury that's about to spawn up in 8 seconds as well. So I imagine Ghost will drop back down towards this one, or pick this objective up and really just kind of put this game out of reach, because now they're up, what, 14,000 gold? That is such a deficit for Sanguine to try and fight into.
I mean, look at it. The net worth of PBM at the lowest for Ghost is still 2,000, a little under. It's about 1,100 gold above the top player there for Sanguine. And just seeing that Panatom's farm is 1,100 below the support for the other team, that's where, like you said, it gets just frightening. I mean, like, you're scared of any fight at that point. He's level 18 compared to Panatom's 20, so experience may be going that way, but when you see the net worth leaning that heavily in favor of one side, it does start to worry you, because now you can look at the items. Most of them on the side of Ghost Gaming had their blessing before that back. Captain Twig leaves with a full-on Soul Reaver afterward. Very happy, I think, in his purchase. You also get the full build now online for Panda Cat, who has been having a stellar game at 4-1-0. I think this is just one of those moments where you're so far ahead, you get even further ahead, and now you're feeling yourselves, you're confident. It does come down to the Phoenix Siege and, I guess, defense potential there for Sanguine, which it's going to be pretty solid. Once you have Merlin on your side and the way that these sieges are kind of, I guess, conducted on the side of Ghost Gaming, I think it plays into Merlin and the Jingwei a little bit more, as well as the King Arthur. But there is something to be said about Panda Cat's damage.
Yeah, Panda Cat's doing a lot. The less Phoenix just found out. Fine OK's in the back line trying to be disruptive. That does keep Netroid and Rongyu out. Left side Phoenix gone. And Ghost Gaming already moving towards mid. Now, they only have about 50 seconds left on this Fire Giant buff. And Sanguine have all their relics, all their ults. So if they want to try and take a fight, try and slow Ghost down, this is not an awful time. It's a 4-1 split with Sam looping around the top side to contest and maybe see if he can blink in the back. He does.
So good.
Hits everybody. Netroid and Shinto, that's the backline damage removed by the jungler working with Mike. That makes it easy for the front line of Ghost to take care of the front line of Sanguine. Panda Cat gets to the heart bomb, lives through it cleanly. That's a D aside. What's set 3 for the day? Because we are done with set 2. Ghost take care of Sanguine.
That, I don't think I've ever seen the heart bombs be that just upsetting to watch on one side. Rongyu so close, ready to try and get the kill. At least pull back Panda Cat. You can do it. And then he slips away right through his fingers because of those heart bombs. And I want to say, you know, for a class that's called Assassin, you don't typically get to see them assassinate that often, but that's the only way I could use to describe the Fear No Evil and the play that PBM and FidoK executed there at the end. That loop around to drop that ult, find 2 kills in the fountain, separate the team completely for Sanguine, ruin their 5v5, then just made it easier for everybody to pick up that Phoenix, pick up the rest of the kills, and run right into the Titan. That was well executed from Ghost. Honestly, it made me forget Game 2 even happened because they won that one just so dominantly.
Listen, everything looks good when you're up 15,000 gold, but that fight would have been good even if things were even. Well played by Sam and the rest of Ghost, and congrats on the 2-1 over Sanguine. We'll break this one down right after this quick break.
As the sun steps down and escapes the day, we'll calmly walk away from the fray. When structure falls and all else fails, we will build it once again. When the colors fade and it turns to gray, we'll calmly walk away.
Ghost Gaming keeps the trend going, at least in one sense. They break the trend of Arthur and Hercules winning every game, but they keep the trend going of winning or losing fast. And in this case, they won pretty fast, Mifflin. They win the set 2-1 over Sanguine. Got a lot of respect for the Ghost Boys for sticking to Mike's mantra of getting in there and winning fast or losing fast. And they did it really quickly in the early game in that duo lane, Miff. Cupid Kuzenbo turned out to be a much better kill lane than even the Cupid Hercules that we saw in game number 1.
Yeah, they were absolutely dominant in that lane, largely due, in fact, to just Mike playing immaculately on this Kuzenbo, not only controlling the pace of lane, but also able to position himself in this team fights. I mean, that last Fire Giant take that they got, immediately Mike walks himself to the tier 2 tower of Sanguine and keeps Shinto locked there as the rest of Sanguine kind of conveyor belt their way into that team fight and lose their lives 1v1. Mike just controls space so well.
Was dominant in this game on this Kuzenbo. Twig had a fantastic game on the Poseidon. Not exactly the most standard Poseidon build you'll ever see in your entire life. A breastplate and a Pythags dropped in there, but did the job, no doubt, on this pick. Even though it was top 3, ended up looking pretty solid. I've got to imagine that we're going to see a lot of different styles of highlights here because everyone was just owning for Ghost. It was a team effort in this one, and it leads to a pretty easy Game 3 victory. Sanguine now 3 set losses in a row, but at least they got one this time, Miff. They haven't been swept 3 sets in a row, and I don't know if that's exactly what you want to hang your hat on, but at least it's something.
I mean, it's certainly something, but I think the main takeaway is that Sanguine, again, the one game that they do win, they do exactly what Sanguine is known for. Wait for the late game, group up, allow Shinto to play this incredibly far back line role on the Thoth, and then return damage as an artillery strike mage from a range. Whereas in Game 3, again, they brought the fight to Ghost in the early game, which I think, no matter who you are, is likely going to be a bad idea. I don't want to fight Ghost pre-25 minutes if I'm anybody, and it just doesn't quite work out for them. I think that Sanguine really do play at their best when they're playing to their strengths, and sometimes they just choose not to.
Today, they end up only winning one, but that's an improvement from what we've seen from them recently. With that loss, they end up tying the Pittsburgh Knights for 4th/5th. Might have a switch up in the top 4 for the first time all Phase 2 coming up pretty shortly, with PK's resurgence and Sanguine's slump happening right at the same time. Ghost was saying that they might have been in a little bit of a slump earlier on this phase. That has since been put in the rearview mirror after their victory over SSG last week, and now a big win against Sanguine here today. That leaves only Radiance as a top 4 team that they haven't played against recently, but Radiance looks anything but top 4, and those two teams play on Sunday. So we get to see a real test for Radiance there. We'll see if Radiance can match that sort of energy next up against SSG, but don't want to move on from this Ghost Gaming victory too quickly. Was a pretty big one for them here, I think, Miff, just to keep that momentum for beating SSG going.
Yeah, and you know what? If you want to say that Ghost was in a slump earlier on, sure, they took 2 set losses in a row, but they're still 10-3 in the standings. These guys have always been one of the favorites. They've also always been leading the meta. I mean, PBM, one of the first people to lock in the Hercules in that support role. They're constantly trying to evolve what's available to be played in mid. Twig playing the Hebo, the Poseidon, whatever he feels like doing. I think Ghost Gaming has found what works for him, and it's almost anything in the God Select screen. These guys are so absolutely versatile, but I think a lot of it's brought to them by Sanford Soccer's play.
Everyone playing lights out right now for Ghost, and that includes the man behind the scenes, maybe not playing, but working behind the scenes, and that's Slaney, their coach, who's standing by with John Finch for his interview.
Thank you, Aggro. That's right, Slaney completes the package. That is Ghost stumping everyone in the league right now. You guys are at the top of the standings with FSG, maybe a game behind. We'll see once they play, and you've already won the head-to-head with them since you've beaten them twice now. Are you guys just the best team in the league, then?
Well, I've always said that I think we're the best players in each of our roles. I think it's just the way we play SMITE is just like inherently risky. So we always have like the chance to drop games, obviously along with the slump that we had. So yeah, I'm biased, but I do think we're the best team, and I don't think it's close.
Hey, right now the evidence is starting to accumulate on you guys' side. It was a strong set for you overall, but Game 2 was pretty tough. What did you see that went wrong for you guys in that second game where Sanguine ended up stumping it?
They kind of played uncharacteristically like how they usually played. They put a lot of pressure on us early game. We obviously had like a bad death in the mid lane, which really put us on the back foot, and they pressured us really correctly throughout the whole game. I don't think they made many misplays. We still have opportunities to win the game, but I think they just they had a good draft, and they played around their strengths really well.
Well, the Anubis was getting banned by Sanguine there quite a few times. Do you think that that's something we could see come through for you all if it doesn't get banned in the future?
I mean, it's Ben, so anything can be played. We're not like too sure why they decided to ban it, but it definitely made things a bit easier for us. But I mean, it is Ben, like I said, so who knows?
Sure. I was kind of worried it was a fine okay ban. He might be playing it over there at Solo.
That would be
Thanks
spicy.
for talking to me. That would be spicy. Thanks for talking to us, Slaney. Now, we're about to take a break, but we're going to reset the streams here as well, chat. So we're going to get things going back to how they should be. A real quick break. We'll be right back with that third set.